What I want to talk to at first is a kind of generalized, super generalized structure for story, like what happens in a story. And this can be true in smaller forms, like short plays, but mostly we're going to be talking longer plays. You can accomplish more, and thus the layers are a little bit deeper, richer, more complex. So we're going to think more Shakespeare than 10-minute plays. So what I want to do is we'll kind of do it together, so we can have like a shared language. We're going to fill up this board with how moments and elements of a story, and then we're going to figure out why they're there, so that we can have get a reason for why. Let's start with why we have one main character. So the first thing we need for a story is a protagonist. Notice that is singular. You can have group plays where there are many important characters, but there's one character who starts the thing, who sustains the thing, whose actions and the risk that we're following. So I will be speaking about Romeo and Juliet soon. It is Romeo's play. Juliet is very important. However, it is Romeo's play. Can't do it without Juliet, which is why she's in the title too. But the protagonist of that story is Romeo. And the reason, okay, so that's a big one, right? So protagonist. Why we have one is because we are one person. The entire world is filtered through our brain, one brain at a time. So yes, you can learn a ton about other people, you can empathize with other people, you can know other people really well, but everything goes through your perspective, not 10 other people's perspectives. So really, a play is one brain, right? So we have one protagonist that we follow because our life is about us following us. Again, we can try to disassociate, which is actually what theater allows us to do, is to go, okay, I'm going to go in somebody else's brain for a minute, but it's not somebody else's brains. We can only do one at a time. So that's part of why when you have an ensemble, that is important. But I would say it's something like The Humans, which is the most ensemble play that I've seen in a long time, or something like August Osage County. Great, big, beautiful plays, and everyone in that play is so important. But we're really in August Osage County following the oldest sister. And in The Humans, I think we're following the dad, because he has the most to lose, and he has the biggest reveal, if any of you have seen this play. So there's a lot at stake for a lot of people in it, and everyone's wires are being crossed. But there's one central goal. In Romeo and Juliet, Romeo's the first one, right? He's heartbroken when we meet him. Ugh, girls suck, won't call me back. Ugh. Goes to the party, right? Sees Juliet. That's when the play begins, right? Juliet's fine. She's just hanging out. She doesn't have any care in the world, just hanging out at a party. And then, it is when he sees her. Who's that? Somebody tell, who is he? She's a Capulet? Shit! I'm going in anyway, right? So Romeo is the one who overcomes the political bias, the family bias, charges in and is like, I don't care, I think you're awesome. Dance with me. And thus, all tragedy. It's all his fault, basically. Again, we spend a lot of time with Juliet on her own, too. So we come to know her, and we care, and know how her journey is specific, but still we're following that Romeo train. So again, it seems like a lot to focus on just like the first word of our definition, but it actually is important, because oftentimes we do think, well, my play is about a lot of people, actually it's about a family more than a person. I'm sorry. No, we need one person who has that central part to it. Okay, so a protagonist. One protagonist. There is a new dynamic that occurs, that happens to this protagonist. That new dynamic, Aristotle often, there's a catalytic moment in the beginning of a play. For Romeo, the new dynamic is Juliet. Juliet shows up and he's like, everything is different. Can't stop thinking about her, must go, can't stop. For Hamlet, the new dynamic is the ghost of his father, who shows up and is like, so I was murdered. You should do something about it. In our stasis beforehand, that there is a thing that changes. And it's not a new person necessarily. It can be, of course, like Romeo and Juliet, but a new dynamic. There's something that is irreversible, has changed the waters, The river is bending differently. There's new weather that's happening, whatever metaphor you like. But it's something that is impossible to ignore for our protagonist. That new dynamic sets in motion a new goal. And again, these are important, the word new. That's why we're writing this story right now. It has to be something, it can't be something that Hamlet's father has to show up today, not 10 years ago, and Hamlet's been thinking about it for a while. Like, that's not why. No, I want the day that the ghost shows up. I want the day when you meet the love of your life, not the week before, or you met them 400 years ago and went, that's terrible. Example. So there's a new goal now. This dynamic prompts a new goal. So it's not just there, Romeo's content to be like, oh, new dynamic, Juliet, I'm just gonna watch her from afar. No, it's a goal now. I want her. I want her to love me. I want to touch her and talk to her and kiss her and marry her, and I want all the things. So it has to be a new goal, and again, an overwhelming goal, something that is impossible to not sit with. Romeo has to have it. Hamlet cannot stand that somebody got away with murdering his father. He thinks he knows who did it too. And that guy happens to be the current king, god damn it. So there it just, you can't sit with it. It's not enough to ignore. So okay, protagonist, new dynamic, new goal. All of these are why the first 30 pages of a full-length play are easy to write. Because this stuff is easier to just throw in. Be like, cool, I'm gonna throw in a murder and a love story, and awesome, let's go. The rest of the play is what's hard to write. We get into that 30, 40 pages and you're like, now I don't know what to do. That writer's block is because I think we haven't thought of the end. For me, we'll talk a little bit about this, a lot more about this next class. But a big part of my process is going ahead, once I have this, jumping to the end, as far as I can think. Where are we going? Why are we doing, where is this headed? If you're on a journey to climb a mountain, you know where the top is. You know the point is, you don't want to stop in the middle. You would like, yeah, no, I'm going to the top, cool. That's why you have the journey laid out for you. There may be reasons that you can't get there in the end. You know, various Mount Everest-like stories, death and mayhem. But you know where you're going. So similarly for writers, I feel like we think we're going to get to the end when we get to the end, instead of, no, you got to know the end so you can get to it. And I will release you from the pressure of having a perfect ending all mapped out before you even start writing. That's not the point. It's to have an idea of where we're going. And we'll get to this in a little bit when we talk about Uber structures. What kind of play is it? You have to ask yourself, is this a tragedy? Are we going Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet? Are we dying? Is our main character dying? Are his friends dying? There's various versions of tragedy, but oftentimes it's a great loss. Either we lose our own life, or even worse in some ways, is losing somebody we love. So anyway, is that gonna play? Are we going funny? Are we going funny, happy? You could still lose people and die in comedies, but is there hope at the end? What is the point of this? And then you will probably have to adjust this dynamic and this goal, and even the protagonists themselves, to accomplish this end, right? So if your goal is a tragic one, I'm going to show, I'm going to get my protagonist to a place where they lose everything. We might have to figure out why, because if they're like a super decent person and they lose everything, that's not a very fun story to see. That's just awful. Wait, I'm sorry, they were nice and then they died. Wait, I don't want to see that play. If they're full of bullshit, if they're a jerk, if they think that they are entitled to everything around them and don't care about anyone, then if they lose something, we go, yeah, see, that's what happens to jerks. Right? There is some satisfaction in that story. And this is like middle school level psychology, but it does affect us. So a couple of things to note here is that the end is the most false thing about a story. And I will tell you, that's why we have them at all. Endings. Because life doesn't actually end. If our life ends, life doesn't end, it keeps going. If our relationship ends, nope, everyone else is pretty much going. Even, catastrophic planet failure, the other stars are like, yeah, no, I'm fine. Right, so that is the strangest thing. And I think the actual reason we write stories at all is to explore meaning. That's what an end is. It's a meaning. It's asking ourselves, but what was the point? What did we learn? What changed? How did we get to this point? So that at the end we can go, again, primal brain allows us at the end of the story to go, okay, do I want that to happen or do I not want that to happen? If I want that to happen, I'm going to take note of what happened before and go, cool. So I will fall in love with my enemy's daughter. Excellent. That sounds like a great plan. If I want to, I can die in the tomb. Too late to save her. If you're like, no, that's not, I don't think that, I like that plan, then you will take note of what happened before and go, okay, cool. So maybe stop civil war earlier. Let's try to peacefully resolve family scenarios so that we don't have a lot of young people dead at the end of a play. Cool, great. Again, the entire point of the story, as we are putting it together, is a lesson. That's really all it is. It's teaching us something. We humans are, over here, brainy, big brains. We're dexterous. We like detail. We like fine detail. We like to explore it. We are very social, the most highly social species on the planet. We are verbal, and we're emotional. So all of these things, particularly with our big brains, mean that we are learning all the time. We never stop. We are constantly evaluating everything. And because we are highly social, we mainly focus on people. We want to know, but how are you doing what you do? How did you get to where you are? Are you friendly or are you not friendly? How do I tell? How do I apply this, what I learned from you and you, to the next person I meet? So we are constantly actively going about asking ourselves how to survive and how to learn. Learning helps us survive, right? So that's what a story is. It is a really concentrated life that we get to see from beginning to, end. And so that's why we pay so much, so close attention to everything in the story and why we apply it and why we want at the end to go, yeah, okay, so what was the point? Tell what's the takeaway. And there's a lot that you can learn in a story. And the reason why we've invented this form is so we can absorb it all in a group. And why we like it in a group is because we can tell if other people are learning what we're learning and if it matters to other people. That's why laughter is very helpful. And they're like, kind of sigh and play, right? That's all of us going, oh yeah, see, I thought that was important too. Exactly, yeah, I'm gonna take that. We can talk about that later, right? Or if we're all laughing at somebody's hypocrisy, we go, yeah, that is stupid, right? I don't wanna be like that guy. So all of these things are reinforcing how can I be a more successful human being? That's what stories tell us. Cool, okay, so we have a protagonist who has a new dynamic in their life that makes them attempt a new goal. This is the attempt. Attempting, trying, achieving. Hamlet is like, I'm gonna pretend to be crazy. I'm going to do a play that reenacts what I think happened to my dad and see if anybody is miffed about it, okay? I'm going to, all manner of Hamlet-y things, to try to figure out his goal, which is to get justice for his dad, who died. He doesn't know exactly what justice means. He doesn't know if it's kill somebody. Perhaps it is just really embarrass them. Perhaps it is out them and ostracize them from the community. In the end, it's killing, which we could have guessed. But that's not the exact goal he starts out with. Avenge your father. And he says, cursed spite that ever I was born to set this right. Set this right doesn't mean stab a guy. Set it right. Cool. So again, that goal he tries to do in a ton of different ways. Now, the other element is that, I shouldn't read you this, these are metaphorical dominoes. Because every attempt to achieve his goal knocks another domino over, causes the next version of his attempt. He's not successful until the end. If he was successful in the first domino, then the end would be here, right? It's not. So, he's got to, and there are elements to a goal, right? It's not, again, because he doesn't say, I'm just gonna go kill Claudius. He's got to confirm to himself, are ghosts real? Because I think a ghost told me this. Which, should I believe a ghost? I'm not sure. Okay, maybe. Okay, no. Seems real. Cool. So confirmed one, check. Did Claudius do it? Yeah, it seems like he pretty much did. Oh, I am hearing him actually confess to the crime. Definitely did it. Great, cool. So now, I now have the proof that I'm not crazy, that Claudius is guilty. What am I going to do? And in the end, again, several attempts, we end up in a scenario where he is literally, with sword in hand, sword and poison, 2 weapons of choice, face to face with Claudius. Now, the reason why he doesn't kill him up here when Claudius confesses is because that's not good enough. That doesn't satisfy his goal, which is justice. Because Claudius is confessing to God about his actions, which means, based on the religious preference at that time, Claudius is going to go straight to heaven. Clean slate, no justice there. Dude, you go to heaven after you did all this? So Hamlet's like, no, gotta wait. Oh, I want to kill him so bad, I'm going to wait. Whatever you think about that logic, that to Hamlet makes great sense. So we go along. Now he does kill somebody. He kills Polonius at the time, just for good measure. A couple of other things happen to Hamlet. I should have just warned you that I'm going to use Hamlet as a big metaphor. Other things are happening at this time. Dominoes don't just knock over one domino in this case, right? We knock Ophelia over, we knock Rosencrantz and Guildenstern over. There's a lot of bodies at the end of this. So mayhem is caused by this. But at the end, the goal is met in a surprising way. So the sneaky thing that we have in here is a revelation. That's the big element right before the end of a play. And again, if stories are there to teach us something, that's why we have this right before the end. Because there is some secret, something is revealed, something is given over that makes the ending possible. So for Hamlet, the revelation actually happens, for those of you who know the play, there's a short sword fight between Hamlet and Laertes. There's a lot of reasons that they're mad at each other, but mainly it's for show. And all of Denmark is there. Anyone who's anyone, because this is like the prince and a duke, son of a duke, two famous people fighting each other in the palace. The king's watching, the queen's there. It's like Wimbledon or something. It's like the Super Bowl. So everyone's there paying attention. It is at this point that Laertes, when he is poked with a poisoned sword on the floor, says, "The king's to blame." So that is a true statement from a mostly neutral party in front of everyone who matters. So suddenly, Hamlet's point is proved. That's actually the climax of this play. It is a revelation of truth. Hamlet goes, "I knew it, and now everyone else does." That is the satisfactory moment for our hero. Justice has actually been served at that point. I would say. Hamlet not so much, because he's got to go kill Claudius. But it is after, literally after, the moments later from this delivery of public truth to everyone that matters, that Hamlet takes this poisoned cup of wine and to the king says, "Follow my mother." Poison there. All right, the mother's died too. She's dead too. A lot of people dead. And so at that point, we are on our way to the end. It's just moments later. So all of this again happens. Now, part of the revelation isn't just a true thing or a secret, or like, "I've been having an affair," kind of secret, or "you're secretly adopted," or whatever last minute thing. It is kind of a turn of where we think we might be going also. So there is a kind of story that if we want to learn a lesson, like, just tell us the lesson, right? So earlier stories, a lot of these are Greek. A lot of the Greek plays, they have some moment of revelation at the end, but some just kind of go right in. It's like tragic when it starts, it's tragic when it ends. Like, tragedy happens to tragic people. That's the lesson. In Shakespeare, we have a lot more subtlety and a lot more human nature. There's more chaos. There's more winds that are tossing us around, which happens in humanity, right? There's things that we can't control, things that come in and show up and occur to us, and our brains are very complicated and we're emotional and everything. So a revelation is also a bit of a turn from, again, where we think we're going. We think Hamlet will get to stand proudly over the dead corpse of the murderer of his father. I am no king. Aha. No, he's dying too. So in the end of Hamlet, we have this sea of people. But if you think about it, way earlier on, in the very first moment of the play, in the new dynamic that occurs to Hamlet, Hamlet says, there is something rotten in the state of Denmark. He doesn't say in the state of me, in the state of, the entire state of Denmark is rotten. At the end, it's not anymore, because everybody's dead, it was rotten. We got kings, queens, Hamlet himself. I don't think at the beginning he would have classified himself as part of the problem. He was. And so at the end, we have literally a new nation is taking over because Norway is taking over the country basically at the same time. We have this new military leader coming in to take over Denmark. So it's literally not the same country anymore at the end of the play. So that's a pretty big lesson, right? The state of Denmark is rotten. We think it's just one story about Hamlet, but the big revelation, the big turn, where we don't think we're going, is that Hamlet's got to die too. I mean, we should have known, because all Shakespearean tragedies, if you're in the title, we're not long in the world. So just know, if you find yourself in a Shakespeare play and you're in the title, watch out. All the comedies don't have names in them. They're Much Ado About Nothing, or not Othello. So, okay. But again, we have this switch, and even in this play that you can see on our stages, it's a beautiful version of it, because we see someone fighting for something there the whole play, and then at the end, there is, I won't tell you, but there is kind of a gift given, this humbling release from the main character that is in many ways the opposite of what she's been fighting for the whole time, and yet it achieves her goal. And it's really beautiful, but it has a similar, this twist at the end, which to us has a more satisfactory feel. Okay, so here, this is story structure. Hello, dear Elliot. Don't interrupt my class, Elliot. So, okay, so this is, in a nutshell, what every story, even Hamlet, there's just like 7 words total that we have described Hamlet. So really what we see here is this skeletal structure that, much like any human skeleton, is the same everywhere you go. And even comedies have a version of this. Not so sad. But there is a revelation at the end. Perhaps this revelation is, I was the prince the whole time, I was just disguised as a beggar. Or, I've been a girl the whole time, I've just been disguised as a boy, which Shakespeare loves that trope. So there's a lot of, even if you think, you know, Hamlet and Dumb and Dumber couldn't be less alike, there is a similar structure in that we have protagonists that are dealing with a thing, searching, trying to get this thing that matters deeply to them. And each of these words you can actually spend a whole class on, because this dynamic has to be so earth-shifting that, again, it is impossible to ignore. And this goal has to be so critically important to them that they can't imagine leaving it alone. If they can, we have the wrong protagonist, the wrong goal, the wrong dynamic. Something needs to shift so that this is the most important thing in the most important moment of this person's life. Again, thinking back to reptile brain, why would we want to spend 2 valuable hours doing anything but watching something that is really important? We don't want to watch people just sit around and chat. We don't want to watch people talk about what they got at the grocery store that day, right? No. We need something that is really critically important. Again, as an examination of teach me how to survive. Teach me what is so important. Teach me why love is worth dying for. Teach me why a rotten state cannot last. And sometimes you've got to clear it all out to make the world. No political references here today. Rotten state. Yeah, it's about time for Hamlet, really, isn't it? Maybe not so obvious as that Julius Caesar, but yeah. Or maybe Lear. Lear, similarly, right? Oh God, Lear. Lear is just so great. Right? The dynamic is so clear. The kingdom is being split up. It's got to be split up 3 ways. He does this stupid test. And with that dumb test, his youngest and the most viably decent, hello, of his daughters, dear Cordelia, is the one that, because he is so proud, oh God, the metaphors to just, their symbolism is so obvious, you can't even talk about Lear without referencing. Anyway, so Lear allows us this exact same dynamic. The goals are so important because this is a kingdom that he is splitting up. It's not like, here are my gold watches that you get to enjoy. No, this is a kingdom. The future of this kingdom is here. 3 daughters, right? Women, procreators, they are the next generation, the ones who are going to carry this kingdom forward. And none of them have children in the end, and they all die. That is not so. Right, so we have this madness, this pride-filled mad king who, through the goal of trying to save and trying to invigorate and pass on his kingdom, does everything wrong based on pride and selfishness and greed, which is echoed in his sisters. All the while, all the goals, all the attempts to fix it, to right it, ends with this revelation where, of course, he dies. The biggest thing that happens is the good person dies too. Cordelia dies as well. So that, again, in a very similar way to Hamlet, has that rotten state of Denmark thing, where if you have this poison at the heart of a country, even good things will die. So that's a huge lesson. That's a big time lesson. And again, think about Shakespeare writing this in England, one of the most fraught countries of kings taking over and new systems, right? And this is right in the middle of Elizabeth to King James, so we're going Catholic and Protestant and back and forth, and people are being hung and gutted in the streets for their religious beliefs, and something is rotten in the state. Right, so okay, I can talk about Shakespeare all day, but all this is to say, this tiny little diagram covers so many stories across cultures, varied with language, with race, with time. I mean, we're talking about plays that are hundreds of years old, and this is the same structure that you can see in Game of Thrones, right? So that's why story is so critically powerful. And when we think about it in terms of who we are as humans, this is where it starts to click into me very practically how playwrights can use this to make sure that theater does this version of story so well, so that when we walk away, you can actually use this plus some biology that we're going to discuss to make something that is so memorable and unforgettable and emotional. And if you think about it from that perspective, old storytellers are going to go, okay, I want to learn a lesson. Instead of stumbling on a lesson, right, going, oh, we're going to start a story and we'll see what it teaches you once I get to the end. No, they start with, this is a story about how to share. This is a story about how don't be an idiot with fire. I don't know. There's lots of ways that you start with the moral. You start with the end. And then you figure out how to tell a story that accomplishes that. Now, nowadays, in modern theater, oftentimes we don't think of plays like that. We think, oh, we'll start with a character that's really interesting. We'll start with a story in my life. Or we're going to start with some phantasmic something. But you're going to have to answer this question eventually. And if you can't, your play probably won't have that satisfactory, like, oh, right, after a good play when you're like, whew, man, I have to think about that one. Or you want to talk to somebody right away. Or to sit in your chair for a little while being like, holy shit. Right, so impactful. Or you're laughing so hard, oh my god, it was so, I can't wait, I gotta tell people to go see that. Right, all of those reactions, you can program. It's a dangerous word to say in your Silicon Valley, but it is true. Because in some ways it is a program for us to say, I'm gonna tell you who to care about, I'm gonna set up a high tension, high stakes, I'm gonna make it really interesting, everything they do, and here's how you make something interesting. Things are not disconnected or random. They are building. That's how you keep an interesting thing, right? Because if we go, and then this other thing happened, we're like, well, I was paying attention, okay, now I have to re-engage and focus on, right, that's why too many plot stories become hard to follow and thus we lose interest. Every time you shift, you kind of go, the tension drops. But if you are, as Hamlet is doing, this, oh, now I learned that, I can do this, ooh, and then I made a mess, so I have to go clean that up, which causes this, which this, which this, which this, which this, which leads to me standing in front of the king with that poisoned cup, everyone hearing that he is guilty, and me saying, yeah, I can kill you now, right? Woo, that's a roller coaster. If we suddenly kind of go, and you know, Shakespeare does take a few divergences, because he's Shakespeare, he can do it anywhere he wants. But if we were to suddenly go, let's go over to Verona, Italy for a while in the middle of Hamlet and meet people we haven't met before and talk about pottery for a while, it's like, what? You lost the entire thing goes away. So that's what keeps our interest, is keeping stakes high, keeping tensions high. Things have to be changing, and our person has to be adapting to those changes, still with their goal in mind, right? They're still going to the goal, but let's say they get pushed to the side for a minute. Okay, now I have to figure out how to get back on track, still going forward. Okay, and now you're pushed over here. All right, now I'm still going, right? So that's why this goal has to be so juicy, and everything has to cause something else, right? So we don't stray far from our one protagonist's main goal. Again, there are other, the expert storyteller that Shakespeare is allows us to investigate Gertrude's story, his mother, the queen. We get a little bit of Ophelia. I wish we got more dramaturgically. I think we could have done better there. But we need, other political allies that are complicating the story, and all of it is really to make Hamlet's life harder. Things are happening in and around him, but in the end, Ophelia's grave is the one that he's, standing in with poor York, his speech there. And Laertes is Ophelia's brother, Laertes. Again, the one who is in the battle at the end, the whole big point meeting there. It is Ophelia's grave in which they both find themselves standing. That starts the battle, that gets to the end. So, right, Ophelia is critical even when she's dead. She's still influencing the action that's going on. So it all feeds back in. So again, anything that is taking you too far afield is going to not serve the story for being that, like, the roller coaster ride that we want it to be. Okay, so story structure there. For a second, I want to go over to a little bit more science to, again, reiterate and strengthen why this is the case, and give you even more very literal, practical things to think about. So this is a book called The Art Instinct by Daniel Dennett. Amazing evolutionary biologist and a philosopher of science. And one of the things he talks about in stories that are why they are everywhere on the planet and why they're valuable is, okay, so they are low cost, low risk experiment. They're literally an experiment. So what happens if we take a prince, kill his dad, but the guy who did it is now the king and married to his mother? I gotta see how that plays out. Right, wind it up, go. But what it is not, there are experiments within the experiment too. Okay, so what if we complicate it? Let's see, I don't know what would happen if we use, this is, within this play there is a play, right? So Shakespeare is literally experimenting within his experiment. When Hamlet tells the players, so let's make a play that basically reenacts what happened to his dad, so he can catch the conscience of the king. The play is the thing to catch the conscience of the king. So, in general, that is theater altogether. It's trying to catch our consciences. The whole thing about it is, how do we make something that feels real, or if it doesn't feel real, it's so amazing, and we can't look away, so that our consciences are caught up, and we go, God, I've never thought about power like that, or love like that, or betrayal like that. So again, one big, enormous experiment. So for you, as a writer, when you're thinking about which story is worth writing and how to tell it, what experiment are you doing? Like, what is the goal of the experiment? Now, a good experiment, actually, you don't have a super clear agenda, because the experiment could prove it wrong. So you don't want to make the science go toward this, good science. We don't want to say, I'm going to do an experiment that proves this. No, you're going to do the experiment and see what it proves. But having a sense of what you might accomplish at the end is a little bit like having a sense of where you're going in the play. The example I used from Hamlet, since I've been deluding you with that, is Shakespeare's writing Hamlet, and he's like, cool, so I know my protagonist, Hamlet, I know the dynamic, dead dad says he was murdered by current king, cool. The goal, justice for dead dad. Lots of work, lots of things happen, lots of soliloquies. And then But at the end, let's say Shakespeare knows, okay, I'm gonna just say up here, when he's thinking about this play, I'm like, I think Hamlet's gonna get justice. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with that, cool. So he can write the play knowing, how do I have to set that up so that he learns the things he's gotta learn, tests himself against the things he needs to test himself to prove that he can do this, that he can, okay, so he gets in that scenario, King, Laertes, the Queen, everybody's in the same room, he's done a great job, but in that moment, this is where the experiment can go, I don't know what's gonna happen, let's see. Because you could easily see Hamlet ending, again, with Hamlet alive, say. But maybe that's a moment that Shakespeare goes, oh shit, how much better would this be if he dies too? That's great, I like that. Right, so you can, even if you have an idea that Hamlet is still going to get justice, yes, correct, that has not changed with whatever happens in this last moment. But what if he's like, damn it, let's kill everybody, right? Then that thing I wrote earlier about the rotten state of Denmark, oh, that makes so much sense now. Oh, this is great, let's go with that. Killing everybody, right? So he didn't have to know that everyone was going to die at the end to still have written a play about justice, a play about finding justice. So this is where, for playwrights going, I'm sorry, I have to know the entire end of the play before I write it, that would make a lot of us freeze and go, never mind, this is bullshit. But what you can do is, again, know what your play's about. Your play is about finding justice. Your play is about somebody being known and understood for who they actually are, not for who they're pretending to be. Is love wins in the end, whatever. Love can still win in the end and still be Romeo and Juliet, right? Like, love did win, they also died. But it kind of won. So that just allows us to know in general where we're going, like an experiment. I think we're going to prove gravity. We'll see though. Maybe the rock will fly up. I'm not sure, but I think it's going to go down. All right, so that's our experiment. So the next thing in Dennett's list about why stories are so powerful is because they are vivid, memorable instruction. So these are both very important things. Vivid, meaning like, it's gotta be, I can't take my eyes off of it. Right, you've been in the play when you're like, oh my God, does it have an intermission? Are we there yet? Right, and that's because it is not vivid. The stakes are probably too low. It's actually not usually the things you might think it would be, like that terrible word, likable. Oh, the characters are really likable. That's actually not why you're bored. You're bored because there's no tension, which means nobody's doing anything, nothing is changing. One domino is just falling flat and not hitting the next domino, right? So you can write, Hamlet is not likable, King Lear is not likable, right? But they have their entire stories. So this idea that we need to immediately connect and empathize with the character, actually that happens at the end. You realize, oh shit, I feel really bad for King Lear right now. The beginning of the play, I'm like, fuck that guy. But at the end, oh, man, somebody needed to help him. He was sick. He's crazy and sick. Like, we can't, oh, come on. So anyway, so vivid, you can't not walk away. You can't walk away, which will make it memorable. If you see the whole thing, I will be able to tell people about Skeleton Crew that I just saw, or Glass Menagerie, or any number of plays, because I remember them. I can tell you about them right now. That's really good for instruction. Right? That's wisdom being passed through generation. That's why stories were invented, in many ways, because they are compact, vivid, memorable. I can pass them on. So then my kid is gonna get the same lecture about Hamlet, poor thing, eventually. And then maybe he will tell his kids or friends or whatever. So that's part of it, making it so memorable. And part of what making it vivid and memorable is making it human. Right, we're not writing bird language, we're writing humans. So we need to write those things that are so common and important and desirable for us to understand. This is why writing about death and writing about love. Every play is about either death or love, basically. Death, love, and justice. Because those are the things that hit so close to almost every human. We're gonna feel love at some point. It's probably gonna hurt us at some point. But it's also gonna give us incredible joy and meaning and reason. Cool, so go back to that. That's why we keep going back to that subject. We're not done with love. And we're not done with death. As much as we want to be like, la la la, let's just pretend it's not happening. We can't, of course. So for me, almost every play I've written is in some way about death. Because I, since a kid, have been really fascinated with it, confronted by it, wanting to approach it with dignity and confidence as much as I can. So I didn't know that's what I was writing about over and over again, but about 10 years into my career, I was like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm just constantly going back every angle I can think of to approach this subject. Not every single play, but most of them. And that's fine to do. You can write a ton of plays about one single thing. And it's part of why those of you who are thinking of writing about these big subjects, death, whether it's suicide, whether it's old age, love, feeling known, being known for yourself, not having to hide who you are, that is evergreen of interest. And the more specific you write it, actually, this is what makes it vivid, actually makes it more universal. That's that trick of playwriting. The more specifically you make, this is about someone I know so well, and I know the perfume she wore, and I know the lacy things she liked, and I know this, and she used to say this word instead of this word, and she used to mispronounce this, and she'd sing this song. Suddenly, even though I don't know that person, that is every person, because we're all so specific to ourselves. Again, this is why that one protagonist thing, because we're borrowing a brain. So I go, oh, I know, I have very specific things like that. The more specific you can give your character, the better. Usually also the funnier, so that's good. All right, so the last thing, and this is really important about our shared brain, is Dennett talks about a shift of perspective. Stories allow us, as we've been saying, to jump into somebody else's brain. You can't do that otherwise. There's no way to do that, except for through story. Even facts, statistics, history doesn't do what stories do, which is make us feel the feels of somebody. We can learn about Napoleon, but if you saw a play that made you go, oh, Napoleon, just come here, buddy. Oh, I'm sorry. What? That is power. That is strange and dangerous power for storytelling that. We can make you fall in love with anyone, right? Anyone. And some of the most, yes, exactly. Some of the most interesting plays are the ones where you're like, I do not want to like this person. And yet I'm like, oh, I feel for you. That's actually the most interesting play. Because think about somebody like Iago. We know the whole time he's a bad guy. He tells us at the beginning, like, I'm a bad, bad guy. And we love him for it. Every time he comes on, I'm like, oh, tell me your terrible plans. And part of it is because we like car wrecks. We just, as a species, we're like, show me how bad I can get it. I want to see it. I don't want to see it. I do. I don't. Right? But the other thing is he's so charming and smooth. He is this guy who gets all the things done, and he knows it, and we know it, and we still let him do it, right? So all of this is because of this amazing thing that theater has, well, all storytelling has, but certainly theater, because it's live, which makes it all the more powerful, and it is empathy. So we get to, in some cases, like in Skeleton Crew, many of us are not in that class. None of us are of that race. We don't live in that city. We don't have those jobs. But you're going to fall in love with those people. Not just fall in love and like feel like, oh, I wish I could help you. You're going to know them. You're going to laugh at them. You're going to be like, oh, that is so Shanita to say that, right? Eventually at the end, we're going to know that. You're going to feel like you've spent real, actual human time with them. And that is impossible to ignore for you. Your lives are changed because you've spent time with these people. Much like if you spend time with anybody that you in real life had coffee with somebody, you're going to think of that person. If you come into contact with whatever subject you were discussing, or their shirt, somebody else is wearing the shirt they were wearing, it changes you. That's the entire point. Again, as creatures who are so absorbent of new ideas, new experiences, new facts, it's all about how to survive. And because, again, we are highly social, all of that applies most highly valently to people, other people. So again, all of this is to say, this, in some ways, sometimes people feel like this pops the magic, a bubble about theater, like, oh, you're making it too clinical. Literally, you're making it clinical. But I think what that does is help us illuminate, so it's not this mystery that we're like, wait for the gods to inspire me so I can write this play. No, you can show up and go, how do I make this vivid? How do I make it human? How do I make it memorable? The way we make it memorable is we make it extraordinary and emotional. If you leave a play and you're like, yeah, that was a story, right? But if you go, oh, God, oh, I'm heartbroken, or like, I'm so mad, or you're like, I've never had more fun in my life, right? Then suddenly, human beings, when our emotions are engaged, we pay more attention. Laughter makes us go, not only, the primal brain goes, oh, everyone's experiencing this with me. That makes that, whatever happened, more important. Because it's important for everybody else. So cool, I should pay attention to that thing that we've all just said, ha 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 ha. With our ha's, we've all said, that is important to me. I agree. So all of that helps heighten that moment. If something is really sad, right, we take it with us. It really impacts us. This is why we can't get too heady with stories. Shaw, as beautiful and funny as Shaw, if Shaw weren't funny, it would be useless. Because the emotions aren't there often. It's not about people being like, listen to me, right? They're like, hi, very important and funny, it's witty and funny and witty and funny and witty and true. The end. But, so we don't have the heartbreak. We don't have this emotional center that makes us go, pay attention. Because man, I went through that emotion once, I won't do it again. Right? At the end of Romeo and Juliet, when we are like, no, if you'd gotten there earlier, no. I don't like that feeling. I mean, I kind of like it because I like feeling feelings. We are feeling kind of creatures. But I don't want to live in that space. Oh God, let's try to avoid that. That's the story, that's the teaching of it, right? So we get to experience that, and why it feels good to watch sad stuff is because our brain goes, learned a lesson. Great, I'm storing that one, so I feel good that I've learned something, so I can avoid the fate of King Lear, Hamlet, Othello, Romeo and Juliet. All of the great, right? The great plays are the sad ones. They're the big, juicy, oh God. Arthur Miller's plays are like this. Carol Churchill's plays are mainly like, they're more scary. I'm often more scared. Tracy Letts at the Osage County, like these big dramas are often the ones that actually we like most. And there's science to tell us this. There has been anthropological, sociobiological studies that are like, we actually like sad things more. And that is again because what is important to us is to avoid sad things for most of our life as human beings in our real life. So if we learn in a low-cost, low-risk experiment of like, okay, let's experiment, show me the sad stuff so I know how to avoid it, but just make it like 2 hours, in and out, and have a glass of wine, that'd be great. Right, we go in, we learn the thing, then we can walk away being like, whew, learn that, okay, definitely not gonna be King Lear. Yes, right. So, all of this is to say that we want stakes, we want big lessons. So that's why sometimes when I am less impressed with plays that are about like young people breaking up. Aww. All right. Like I don't need that. That lesson I don't go home being like, yes, I will never be that hipster couple drinking beer in Brooklyn and being slightly miserable together. That's not like an enormous lesson that I'm going to take away, but how to watch my mother die and tell her I love her before she does, and face that critical moment, a human moment, that in that human experience. That's one that I'm going to go, oh shit, yeah, I needed that. I needed to know that. And even if it's something that is really unique, there's this play in New York that's about a very sick child, a mother with a very sick child, and man, hopefully none of us have to actually prepare for that. But there is something like it. We're going to have something that is so hard, that is so emotionally draining, that we love something so much and we can't save it, right? That lesson is going to be something that all of us can go, okay, brace yourself, but I'd rather know what that feels like than to show up on my door and be like, I'm ill prepared. I don't know, now I'm scared and confused and I don't know what to do and this is awful. So all of those things, that's why choosing a subject that has some universality to it. Again, a lesson that a lot of people are going to want to know. What is the instruction that a lot of people are going to know? Like how to drive. I don't know what else. Like how to drive, how to be healthy, how to stay safe, and like how do you survive these big moments? So all of that again goes to this point of like these stories are for a purpose. It's not just entertainment. It's not just fun and beautiful. Those things are of value, absolutely. And some plays you could mainly say do that. But even plays, there are a lot of Trojan horses, especially in comedies, where you're like, that was just delightful. But really, it's a play about people being accepted for who they are, people not being overcoming their biases and letting someone be who they are. Comedies are often about like, let people love who they love, for Christ's sake. Right, a lot of Shakespeare is about that. And so there's a lot of more subtle political things that for those of us who feel that art has activism at its heart, which I certainly do, you can do that while making a lovely, delicious, airy comedy. that's part of why the form itself is so extraordinary and so powerful. Okay, just want to know. It is 12:30. Okay, we're gonna back up for a second. First off, quick questions. I've talked for a long time, a lot of Shakespeare. Apologies. Anything that's on your mind or percolating that we might throw into the mix here? Yes.
You mentioned science shows us that we like sad things.
Yeah.
Can you give us a book or two? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
I will also send you this article that has a bunch of links to these great handouts. Some of these fun things. Oh yeah, I will do that in 1 second. So let's see. Where is that statistic? Oh, this stuff is so fascinating. I'm just going to read some of it to you. It's just great. All right, so this is, again, like practical stuff that we can apply to our stories. We are hardwired to enjoy new things. Cool. So human beings' brains are hardwired to enjoy them because we're paying attention to them. Our enjoyment is where our attention is really focused, right? Like sex. We enjoy it because of a couple things. Super focused on it, not distracted. And we know that, again, primal brain is like, this is good for your survival, right? So we can do a check good boxes. 1, a lot of focus. 2, we know this is good. I'm doing a good thing. And all of the feels reinforce that. So, but a new experience has a similar burst of feeling, and it's actually with dopamine. So it's literally a drug when we're doing something new. That's why if you're dating and you're like, let's go for a hike here, and you share a new experience together, you're actually doing good work of making that relationship matter more to you than if you were like, yeah, I'm just gonna go my normal walk to work if you want me to walk to work. That's your fucking walk to work. Nobody's gonna be like, it was so magical. But if you do something new, or if you're in a stagnant relationship, do something new together, go on a world adventure or go skydiving or something, it'll heighten your dopamine and you're suddenly like, I love life and I love you. So that's part of why what theater accomplishes that same thing. It is a new experience. When you sit down in the dark going, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. Even if you do know what's happening, even if you know Hamlet really well, you're going to see it in a new production, it triggers that part of us that goes, okay, I'm going to pay attention. I like new things. This is new. This is exciting. Now I think that dopamine falls very quickly if it is super boring, no tension, all of that. So we have to, the burst you have to get, you have to sustain through the 2 hours. So pretty good. So this other study, let's see, a recent study at University of California, Berkeley. People who experience more awe in their life, which is a surprise that is especially powerful. That is a combination that is what awe actually means. So it is surprising or startling, but moving and powerful. So Grand Canyon, if you've never seen it before, holy shit, that's big, right? Art does that too. Oh my God, that sonnet is like breathtaking. Or this Beethoven's work, or an amazing play that makes you feel the feels. So it actually, people who experience awe are healthier. We have the chemicals of awe and surprise, like the one we just talked about, dopamine. It makes us feel better. It literally says less inflammation. So there you go. Art's really good for you. All right, let's see. Oh yeah, there's a major benefit. This is another one, a great one about benefit of students who attended live theater, seeing the same story on live versus on a movie or reading about it. And they are, so field trips to live theater enhance literary knowledge, like you actually can tell more about the story from seeing it live than having read it. Tolerance, so we understand each other's perspective a little bit more and able to better accept that somebody would have a different opinion or state of life thing. And empathy among students. You're able to go, oh yeah, I really do feel for you. That's not bad. Peter's pretty good at all those things. And again, think about literally those 3 things combined with staying alive as an early human, right? Increasing your knowledge, so you are able to focus more on important details in a story. That's super powerful on a very complex world where eagles are flying down to eat your children and bears are coming in, right? So we need to go, okay, you gotta tell me this quick, focused, give me the goods. Tolerance, right? We have to understand and work with each other, or else we're literally going to die. Human beings can't survive alone. So something that promotes tolerance, that promotes an understanding, and then empathy, being able to go, I get you. Also, I can tell if you are not empathetic to me, that is helpful information. Can I trust you? Are you somebody that I should run away from? Or are you like, is this Iago or Othello, basically? Again, really important, right? This is critical stuff. That's why it's so delightful on stage to see people. That's why bad guys are so much fun. Because we're like absorbing all of the badness. Tell me the badness so that if that guy shows up on my door, I'm like, nope, nope, not you. I've seen you before, So right, that's why we pay so much attention to bad guys and they're so fun to play, right? British people are so good at those bad guys. They're such good actors, so they can really put, again, if we can love Iago, ooh, that takes a good actor, right? Because he's awful, but if he's charming, knows what to say. Right, okay, so good, this is again, great, useful, like primal, how do I make it to the next day kind of stuff. This is what stories are really good at. So that's why in our stories, we have to pump it up and really make those things critical lessons. Okay, we like to be entertained in a crowd. This is this wonderful post by the Washington Post had an article called This Is Your Brain on Art, which I can send to you. It's beautiful, it's amazing, it's everything I want in the world. Social connection is big, right, for our species. We talked about being the highest social species. So when we learn together, it reinforces whatever we're learning. If we were sitting alone by ourselves and watching the play, we would probably take away less because it's not reinforced by everyone else through laughter, through through, at the act break going, oh my God, did you see? Yeah, that was so interesting. Oh yeah, and when she said that, right? So with reinforcement, we go, we are learning a group thing, which is better. Social connection is a key function of our brains. So we actually, when we're watching people. This goes back to that sense of we like to watch people mostly because, again, highly social. We need to know what everyone else is doing, thinking, are they succeeding, are they lying to us? So we are really keen. As soon as some new person comes on stage, we're like, who are you? What's going on? What are you about? What are you saying? Right, so take entrances, and do not take them lightly. Even a servant in the back, you're like, what's his deal, what's his deal, what's his deal? Right? So as a writer, we have to know entrances are big deals. When you introduce a person, we are absorbing a lot all at once. So that's just good, like don't put an amazing monologue by somebody else with somebody else's entrance, right? Because then everyone's gonna be like, what are you, I didn't care what you're saying, what's going on there, right? So that's important to know. We love a story, that's what we're talking about. Basically, their justification is a narrative conveys information from one person's brain to another's in a very effective way, right? Program. So we just downloaded this a whole lesson, a life lesson, or a life, and you get to experience it. Cool. So putting it all together, what else is great about this? There's so much stuff in this article, I'll send it to you guys. Cool. So yeah, the other thing about this is just a fun fact, a little thing I like to talk about is rehearsal. I would quote this little bit. Researchers in France have discovered that adding physical movements to mental rehearsal, like when you're like, I'm gonna practice my mind, I'm gonna get ready for this. If you add physicality, you dramatically improve your performance when you actually do a task. Now, often this is related to sports. So if you're like, I'm gonna throw the javelin, I'm gonna toss something. Okay, heavy tossing it. But if I'm like, I'm gonna toss it, I'm gonna do the thing, I'm gonna do it. Suddenly, when I'm actually in the moment, I can do it. That's theater, right? Theater isn't just, I'm gonna listen quietly while I tell you a story. No, you're watching it happen. And there are these things called mirror neurons, which there's some debate about if they are really critical in terms of theater and live interaction, but it seems that they will be. Mirror neurons were discovered a while ago, and basically what they're doing is when somebody else is doing something, the same neurons light up in us, so that if somebody is cleaning dishes, we go, like I'm doing it in my mind. Again, theater. So if somebody is feeling the feelings, is dealing with this major emotion, is defending themselves, we are doing it ourselves. That's the whole point of how we learn from other people, why we're so addicted to human stories, because we're like, I'm preparing, I'm rehearsing, I'm doing this, yeah. So our brains are designed for story, or they have evolved to coexist with story. Story reinforces what our brains already do well, and the brains take the story and make our brains better, right? So it's this beautiful cycle. So the other thing about rehearsal is when you think about how critical it is for an early human society, the first person that was like, what if we rehearse this time? Instead of the lion just showing up and we're like, shit, get the you do that, and I'll just run away, right? If somebody's like, okay, so the next time the lion comes, I'm gonna go here, you grab here, we're gonna do this, do that, do boom, 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 then it's gonna be taken care of. It works, right? The next time you're like, oh, suddenly I'm prepared and have direction, right? So that, right, it's it's not always necessary. There's a lot of animals that don't rehearse. They just have instinct. Well, we have brains and time and imagination and verbal center that allows us to go, let's practice. Again, it's all an experiment. Stories are practice. They are rehearsal for real life, which is why we feel them so intimately and distinctly. So again, all this is to say that when you're coming up with your stories, when you're deciding, why is my story not working? What about it doesn't feel juicy? Why am I bored? Why do I not know where I'm going? You can always go back to trying to think about it in terms of what huge lesson am I imparting to people? What am I asking people to play out in their own lives? What is something that is going to be so valuable as an experience and so critical to somebody's survival? Now, oftentimes, we're not going to think of every play as like, this is about my survival. But there are things in it that will be. If it's about love, it is about your survival. It's about happiness. It's about comfort, meaning, connection. If it's about death, it's always about survival. How do you survive that thing physically, emotionally? How do you prepare yourself? How do you understand other people? A lot of it is about knowing who to trust. And for a second, going back to these lovely dominoes, part of the domino is cause and effect. That's what we're watching as primal brain animals. Cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. So at the end, when we're looking at the heap of bodies on the stage after Hamlet, we can decide, yeah, that's maybe not how I want to personally end up. So I will reverse that cause and effect and go, okay, so how do I avoid that? What caused what? So that, even now if we're in Romeo and Juliet, what caused what to go, maybe we can do better next time. Let's go back to that first name, which is the real cause of that whole, the whole play, which I will read to you from my phone. This is literally the prologue, which tells us the entire play. Two households, both alike in dignity and fair growing, where really are seen. Great, got it. From ancient grudge, there's your issue. Break to new mutiny. Ancient grudge, ancient. Are we not over this? Come on, let's be better. Ancient grudge, break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers, yay, love. And then takes their life, damn it. That's not good. Whose misadventures, pities, overthrows, doth with their death bury their parents' strife. So there we go. That's the cause and the effect. Doth with their death bury their parents' strife. He's telling us that this is literally the first thing you hear in Romeo and Juliet. And he's saying, two young lovers, star-crossed young lovers, have to die to bury their parents' strife. Right? That is the cause and that is the effect. Alas, Shakespeare is going, how many young people have to die before you guys realize it's not fucking worth it to do this? So knowing that, that's again the first thing you hear. So you're the whole play, you're like, oh no, love is happening, they're gonna die, oh no. But for us, because we are problem-solving social creatures, we're going, okay, how can I stop it? How can I stop? Maybe if he doesn't go here, maybe he doesn't do this, maybe he doesn't do this. Right? That's what I'm doing, certainly when I'm watching Romeo. I can't help it. I can't go, oh, don't get the poison. Just wait 5 minutes. Right? We're trying to problem solve it, we're trying to fix it so that doesn't happen, because we don't want that to happen. So all of that is saying cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. The end of any play, which again he's told us at the beginning, it's interesting dramaturgical strategy, is to go, okay, at the end of this you should be able to say what happened, and maybe you should be able to say why. Like, okay, the star-crossed lovers, they died. Why? Because of the stupid parents' grudge. It's a civil war, we don't need that, we need peace. And the last line of Romeo and Juliet, maybe I can remember it because I think it'll take me a minute to find it, is the prince comes on and says, a glooming peace this morning with it brings. Last line of Romeo and Juliet. So, problem at the very beginning, ancient grudge, war, civil strife. The very last line, glooming peace. So the point, oddly, the point that Shakespeare is making is war is a problem, we want peace. If you don't learn that lesson early, we're going to lose a lot of young people. And that's what happens in Romeo and Juliet. All the young people are the ones that dies. Paris, Tybalt, Mercutio, Romeo and Juliet, maybe one other? All the young people. So the old guard and their fancy houses throwing parties and being mad at each other for ancient reasons don't die. It's the new. And how sad is that? That's the point. So it's beautiful. Isn't that amazing? Like right there in the beginning, he tells us the problem, cause, the effect, death of young people, until you get your shit together. So it's great, it's such an indictment, it's so beautiful, and it's like, I'm gonna like tragic upon tragic upon tragic to the point of peace is worth it. And in some way you can say, love, if there's a love, does love win, can love survive? The people can't survive, but their love actually does, because it changes an entire nation. They said that the death that is buried with that it's buried with their parents' strife. That strife, that ancient grudge is buried now. Well, that's great, good. I wish they didn't have to die, but that means that the next couple generations are gonna live in peace. That's beautiful, right? And it's that kind of beauty, that this beautiful little revelation moment at the end of the play, that's the tingle this should give us. Great theater should be like, oh, I don't want them to die, but they died for a reason. Oh, you know what I mean? That's what's so beautiful about it, and what's complex and what's human about it, because we're complex creatures. So making a play that isn't simple, that isn't like bad guy versus good guy wins, right? Because that's like, I don't know any just good guys. And I frankly don't know many just bad guys, right? Unless it's like Marvel Comics or something. We have complexity, we have a reason for how we are. So that's what's so juicy about great theater, is we can give reasons, and good for playwrights to remember that you can't have somebody that is one note, and you can't have somebody that has no reason for what they're doing. We have to have a reason, we have to have more behind us. Okay. That's a lot of Shakespeare and a lot of science. Maybe we'll start with this when we get back. We only have a few more minutes till I want it to break, so maybe we can take the time right now to kind of digest and ask any more questions or things that we can kind of help elucidate. Anything I just remembered out.
I can't remember what book I read this excerpt from, but that some biologists are now saying that the human brain will remember a horrible event or a bad thing we did much longer.
Yeah.
That's part of what all that in all plays written about regret and remorse and that we really have a brain wiring
That makes such sense.
that more easily remembered.
Because they're dangerous. They're dangerous for us, for
Yeah,
people around it. Like, think about it. It's
That it can be a survival.
That's like a life or death. Those life or death experiences, even if we cause someone else's death, or we cause somebody to hate us enough that we now worry for our, right? There's a lot of social dynamics that go into our decision making, which would be very valent for some people. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I love thinking about it on a biological level, because it's easy to think about it on a kind of aesthetic level, right? Kind of what's beautiful, what's great, and then a very practical level of what play will get produced or whatever. But thinking about it on this kind of really old school kind of mindset, I think elevates what we do, because it's not just entertainment, right? This is something ancient. It actually is critical, and because human characteristics and tendencies that are present in every human society are not there by accident. They are there because they've helped us get to the kind of species we are today. They're a part of it. So language is a part of it. War, certain types of battle are a part of it. Sexual relationships in various different ways are a part of it. And art. There's a reason why we created it. It's not just like, I would like a blue pot. That would make my life better. There's a beauty does something for us. It doesn't just do something to us. We're like, yeah, that's nice, I like that. It triggers, it tells us what's important, it tells us what's valuable, it tells us things like who to trust and all of the stuff that we get to see here. And music does it too. It's such an emotional exercise, right? And God, music is so powerful that it can turn us into an emotional state in a second, right? Oh, I'm so jealous of it. Like, we have to write whole plays to accomplish that. Musicians are like, G minor. So anyway, yes.
Yes, you can wake up with a song in your head and
Yeah.
affect your whole day.
And if you're in a bad mood, turn on a certain song and I'm like, I can do this, right?
Right.
It's so powerful. Or if you listen to Adele, you're like, why? All is lost. Yeah, so any other things that this makes you think of? I hope this is a different way to think about playwriting than you're usually taught. And I think it makes just such a natural sense to me too, when you kind of back it up into that like, oh yeah, duh, I don't want to die, so let's look at plays to figure out how maybe not to do that. Yeah.
Sometimes at the end of a play or a book or a movie or whatever, you might have a situation where you're like, whoa, what really happened there? And it spurs dialogue with somebody, and you can have a very different opinion of what somebody... And so is it that it's intentional and that the end is left open? Or is it there's still an end, there's still a point, and yet they still... But in terms of the action or whatever, they're still left. You know what I mean? I'm trying to figure out...
not every play is good. So sometimes we make meaning out of something that maybe would have been better if there was a more solid structure. So plays that end with like big question mark for me, I rather detest, because it feels like that asks the audience, not all of them, some of them, because it feels like that's asking the audience to complete the play instead of the playwright. Which again, we go to the theater to go, but tell me, you tell me how it ends. I showed up for you to do that, not to be like, what do you think happens? It's like, I don't know, you tell me. But in those cases where we can say, okay, well if he's like about to kill somebody, blackout, perhaps there is use, and there is use in going, let's play out, the rest of the experiment can be in your mind. Okay, if he does kill the person, does that mean he's not who he says he was, or maybe, oh, he's got an but if he doesn't, but then I still want to know, but what happened, right? So there's a certain amount of plot that I think we do need to go, to feel like the playwright thought it all the way out. It seems like sometimes that's fun and mysterious. Oftentimes I find that sloppy writing, that you were afraid of making a decision. So you take this character all the way to the edge of something, of doing something, and then leave them there. Nobody's satisfied with that, really. Like if, again, Game of Thrones or whatever show is super popular now, if that's how the series ended, with somebody being like, and I'd be like, nah, you better resolve that. So I think all of us want to know what happened. In news, when some terrible shooting happens, CNN, that's why we're watching, to go, but why did he do it, but what happened, but who's dead, but, right, that thirst to go, what actually happened is critical for us. So I think there's some way to dance close to the edge of history, and then there's, it's easy to, I think, abandon your audience, which is not right. Yeah.
I didn't see the play down, but I saw the film.
Yeah,
And
it's
the
basically
film was really ambiguous. At the end, it seemed like. I mean, I think I heard the playwright had said that he wanted people to come up with their own conclusion. I think I read that or heard that.
Yeah, I think you did.
So what do you think of that?
I mean,
do you think that worked?
But that play, with it's so beautiful. I think he did an excellent job because every one of us thinks he did. Like, people don't actually walk away from that being like, no, I think he's innocent. No, they don't. They absolutely do not. No, because the world, I think, is telling us with all the stories of all of this. I mean, when he wrote it, we were in like a few decades in of priests doing bad things to young boys. So I think we're going to assume. Now, the fact that we never get an answer feels accurate to me. Because frankly, of how that religious institution scraped so much of the history away, and a lot of people got away with it.
But it was so mind-boggling.
It's so mind-boggling.
That it happened on that grand scale.
Yeah, yes. So I think a lot of us are going to walk away being like, I think he did it. And even if you're not sure, the play is called Doubt. So it is actually about doubt. Do you have enough doubt to excuse him, or do you have just enough to be like, I'm pretty sure he did it. I mean, I guess I don't know, but I'm pretty sure. You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the most well-known of the ones where you kind of leave going, I don't have a full answer, but the truth is we mostly do have an answer.
But, I was gonna say the other play or the story that is just, to me, that embodies this sort of issue is Life of Pi.
Oh yeah.
And when I first saw it, I was a little upset because I wanted to know, was the fantasy real or not? And then I kept talking to people. I mean, it's a good example, I think, of creating that kind of situation where there's some conflict and there's some doubt and there's some wonder, and you just don't let it go. Because I have continued to talk to people about that for a decade. Like, well, which did you think? And
you know, although that at first I was disappointed and I wanted more clarity, I think in the long run, you know, it's stories are so interpretive.
Yeah.
And the fact that I've been dealing with this for, you know, another decade
Yeah.
says something. And then, you know, as I evolved, I really believed in the fantasy, and it's really interesting to talk to people and see who they are and how they feel.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah.
But it's also interesting because in something like Life of Pi, where it is often disappointing if we end with, and it was all a dream. I'm like, well then why did you tell me? Why did you make me go through that? This was totally bullshit. Okay, wait, what? But the fact that you enjoyed that journey, if you lopped off the last little bit where it is ambiguous if it was true or not, that's a great journey.
Yeah.
So in some ways I'm like, why'd you put that at the end? Just let me enjoy it.
Yeah.
And through a play, through a movie, through a novel, we are experiencing the fullness of it. And in some ways it is real because we went through it. Whether somebody shows up and is like, that was a dream. No, it wasn't. I was there, I saw it. Right? So that's, in some ways, it can't not be real if you've made an experience for all of us to go on. And it kind of shoots themselves in the foot if they were like, could be fake. I'm like, well, it's theater, it's all fake, but it's real, but I don't know. You know. Let me enjoy it.
Yeah, not to speak too much about Life of Pi, but I was very moved by that story too. And what I got out of it, the whole purpose of that story was coping.
Yeah.
It's like this is how the purpose was. All of this amazing fantasy was to cope with this horrible situation.
And in that case, who cares if it's real?
Yeah, and the book, the book says it very, very clearly that it was a fantasy, and this is why the baboon symbolizes this. This symbolizes this.
They're
And this is
people.
coping.
Yeah. And in some ways, that I think is beautiful if it can be both. It can be real and not real. And to the end of having somebody have the will to describe. It's pretty beautiful. Yeah.
It's so interesting, because I really thought the priest in doubt, I had no doubt that he was innocent. I mean, that sermon he done, I thought he did it so beautiful, at least a couple times I saw it in a play, that where he said starting rumors is like tearing a pillow apart at the top of a building, and now you have to go gather up all those feathers. And to me it was, because I have too much of that nun in me of this is how it is, tropes and assholes, you know, I mean, it's like, and I have to stop sometimes and say, well, maybe there's a little more gray area here. And so for the play to end with that hardcore Mother Superior type saying, I have done it was what to me really opened up the whole thing of what stories of other people, you know, how we make decisions when we hear stories from them. Anyway, that was
But what's so interesting about that play too is those characters are so rich and so specific.
Yeah.
And we are talking about something fundamental, which is how do you believe anybody? How do you trust anybody? You know, can you trust authority figures? Especially religious ones. Who knew? Wow, okay, this is complex. But yeah, so that has universality to it, but with such a specific world, that's not a world that we get to hang out in very much. Even if you are a Catholic and you go, you're not on that side of things usually. So that is like there's a bit of special, kind of secretively inside a world you're not supposed to be in, which makes, again, the science of new experiences, the science of surprise and awe, kicks up our dopamines so that we're like, ooh, something distinct. I'm not supposed to be here, it's new. And characters can feel that way too. Somebody who's like the wildest character you've ever seen. Shakespeare's a lot of those. The clowns that come on, they make us go like, whoa, because we don't see people like that very, very often. So that kicks in our like, ha-ha, pay attention, laugh, bright colored something. So all of that is like science at work. It is our biology going like, I'm designed to pay attention to that. I've evolved to take note. And similarly with characters like that, the nun, who is so, right? She's got that great strictness about her. And yet we learn to, there's a lot more under the surface that we can see but aren't told.
So back to your, is she was the nun the protagonist
I think
in
so.
that, or the priest?
Yeah.
The nun.
Because at the end, it's her, she's the one who's changed at the beginning.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we'll get to this and after the break, but everything is about change.
Okay.
The protagonist has to change. Through this search, everything changes, and then at the very end of the play, even the change changes. So that we end in a place that is changed from where we started to. But this is, again, what makes it interesting, what makes it important, what makes it fun to watch, is I think they're changing. Stasis is not. Stasis is not fun to watch because, frankly, it's safe. Safety for early humans is like, oh good, I don't have to worry about anything for once. Awesome.
I
feel good, right, let me sleep, rest, right? So a play about easy things is like watching goldfish in a tank, where we're like, lovely, I can just sleep all the time, right? But we kick in and we're like, oh, I should pay attention, this should be valuable. Yeah.
Oh, I was just thinking, I feel like you just explained my entire life. Just the sense of like,
Not the goal of today, but sure.
Strive to get out of stasis,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it can be really hard to
Yeah.
maintain stasis. There are plays about people trying to just keep things okay, but really they are on the verge of not stasis, and that's where the tension lies, in that kind of potential energy of like, I'm on a cliff, ooh, right? We can feel that in our bones when we watch somebody going, you're about to make a bad decision, you're about to make a tell, oh no. Right, that's that breathlessness. And even going into the kind of anatomical sense of what it's like to watch a play, pay attention next time you're in a play or watching. It happens, I think, more viscerally to me in theater, but all kinds of storytelling. Even when somebody is telling you a tense story, what are the things that make you go, right, that when you stop breathing and your heart rate gets a little, right? This happened to me just this week. I was called into jury duty, and sounds like the most boring thing ever, and it was, like 7 hours. But I was not, I was brought into the courtroom as one of a bunch of people that they were picking from, and they tell you I'm sure y'all have been there, but the defendant was there. He was an older guy, like middle-aged guy, and they were telling us the charges. And it was so interesting, I'll never forget this, because this is prime reptile brain storytelling, like, that's how I know this shit is real. Is he was accused of, he was arrested for robbery, which I learned and did not actually realize the distinction between burglary. Burglary happens when no one's there. Robbery, you take it from someone. More aggressive, didn't know that, now I know. He was accused of robbery, of assault, which is battery is if you actually hit somebody. Assault is if you like go for it and they duck or move out of the way. It's still an attack, but it's not like a physical battery. Again, things I didn't know. But then the last one was he was accused of domestic violence. And when they said that, my entire body just went like, heart rate started beating, my eyes were open, I was like starting to shake. And it was amazing to feel, and this was like the most boring delivery of exciting information ever in the history of storytelling. Was this judge being like, here are the things we're talking about, and the final charge is of domestic violence. And I was like, motherfucker! I got so mad. I was ready to like, Wonder Woman. And so that was really interesting for me, calculating and cataloging that sensation in me with those two words, big words, right? Huge, valent, electric words. But that was able to do that to me in the middle of like a crappily lit courtroom in a terrible chair, where I was like, just can't wait to get out of here. And I was like, never felt more prickly in that moment. So that is something that can actually happen on stage, and you can design that reaction, right? Imagine if this is the normal Thanksgiving dinner play, and there's people, and they're all coming in, and and somebody, mentions that the character that is bringing in the turkey was just arrested for domestic violence. You have to be like, or has a gun in his pocket, or was whatever big huge information that you could just drop 2 words in the middle of your play, and suddenly it is a different play. And half of the audience, or more, or all of it, is going to be like, judgment has been made about that character. Right, so this is very real information, for writers like us. Like you can take something and the way, and I think if it was delivered in the like, it's domestic violence, I would be like, oh God. But because it was delivered in this way of like, and the last thing was domestic violence. And I was, just the simplicity of it, just throwing it out there, just like, yeah, it was a normal Tuesday, and he like beat up some lady. I was like, ah!
And then they said, excused.
Yeah, I was like, ask me a question, ask me one fucking question. I had like stats out, I was like, actually, domestic violence is a precursor to mass violence, and it is, I was ready to go, but they didn't ask me any questions. I had my intersectional feminist shirt on, just to make the point really clear, but they didn't want me. They took one look at my pink hair and were like, Anyway, so all that is to say that there are very charged words, feelings, emotions. I know I was ready to exact some revenge, but that's exactly why I should not be on that jury. Maybe you did do it. I have doubts, I have so many doubts. So anyway, that is to say that there is a ton of material and tools that we have that again go into this really base level of our human interaction and our emotional capacity. And that's great theater, right? When we walk away feeling like it's here that we saw the play, not here, then that's good theater work. Yeah, I'm having to think about that moment a lot. Like, ooh, just one word and the way you put it out in the world suddenly made this enormous, like it could have just been a little ripple and it was like, for me, so good to know. Good to know, put that in a place somewhere. Any other question that we can kind of think about before anything else? Okay, so why don't we take half hour, a break. There's Whole Foods across the street. There's some like yogurt and coffee and milkshakes and things around if you want anything. But what I'd like you to think about on our 30-minute break is to come back in. I'd like you to kind of talk about whatever story is in your mind right now. And if you haven't written it yet, you can just start. This is just a time for you to start to try to articulate maybe one version of how you can tell this story using what we just talked about. So the very basic thing, and the way you can talk about it, this is like useless to actually make a conversation around, is so who is your main character? So who's your protagonist? And it is totally fine if you're like, I don't know if it's this person or this person. We can perhaps help with some interrogation to figure that out. So who's your protagonist? The new dynamic. What is that new dynamic? What happens to, and what is their goal? And then I'm going to actually make you tell us what happens in the end. So part of this will be, so who's your protagonist? And let's add, tell us about setting. Is this 1920? Is it now? Is it 400 years ago? Whatever. And if there's anybody else of importance in the story that you think should be in the other parts. So setting and character. I'm not making this any easier in my writing like this. But yeah, so if you just kind of start to list this. And in general, what is very helpful is eventually when you're writing a story, to be able to, in a few sentences, tell what your story is about is really hard. I say that like it's really easy, and it is never easy. The more you've written your play, the harder it is to sum it up. Because I'm like, I wrote the damn thing, it's 100 pages. That's what it's about. It's not about 3 sentences. But everyone, including the marketing people at this theater and many others, require that. And it is a great test and a challenge for our writers, such as ourselves, to do that, even in early ideas. The more I talk about my play casually with my husband, the more it clarifies for me when I go back to writing it. I'm like, yeah, I keep saying that it's about justice. Why don't I just write it about justice? Right? If I think I'm writing it, it's about all these other things, and then every time I talk about it, the first thing I say is like, well, she's in love with this guy. Oh, fuck, it's a love story. Okay. Right, so the more we can talk about it, sometimes it actually helps with the writing, even though we're talking casually. So this is part of that. So we'll talk about protagonist, setting, any other main characters, what has just shifted in the main character's place, if you know that yet, what their goal is, if you know that. And again, you can I think it's maybe kind of this, and sometimes a good reaction is like, yeah, that sounds really passive. That doesn't sound like a goal, that sounds like a landscape. You know what I mean? So that can help you maybe try to up the stakes. But if you can all maybe share something about the story that you're writing, we can start to practically apply some of these sciencey things to it. And we'll also talk about what art does, which is really helpful as well, which I'll leave you that. Take one in your back. So take half an hour. So this is a book that, from a book called Art as Therapy. It is by Alain de Botton and John Armstrong. It's a beautiful book that's mainly about visual art, like it has reproductions of gorgeous paintings of all different kinds and all across the history of art. But its entire purpose is, like our thesis today, there's a point to art. It's not just pretty, it's not just decoration, it's doing something for us. And this was their list, which when I came across it, I just kind of, I love it so much. So I use it all the time to kind of, again, this is a little bit more of an aesthetic, kind of philosophical understanding of art. Ours is more primal, biological. But it, for me, opened up a couple of different avenues to ask myself why I'm writing at all, which helps me answer the question what to write, how to write it, how do I know when it's done, what is the point of it. So all of that kind of started, or can start, a conversation for me is looking at this. So it actually starts on this page that says, what is the point of art? And these are failures of human beings, or things that are challenging to us, that on the other page, art corrects, or art allows us to remedy. So the first one is we forget what matters. We can't hold on to important but slippery experiences. This is everything from a really impactful thing happens to us and we black out. We can't recall it. It's too much. It's too sensitive. It's too hard. It's too beautiful. We can't even describe how beautiful it is. So we therefore fail to remember it accurately. All of those reasons that we forget big and small things. So art is a corrective of bad memory, not just memory, but a corrective of bad memory. Art makes things memorable and renewable. These are the fruits of experience. It makes them memorable and renewable. So it's a mechanism to keep precious things and to keep our best insights in good condition and makes them publicly accessible. So that's awesome, right? So we can collect our the important things that teach us, how not to die in Denmark, and beautiful things, how to love, what it feels, that first rush of love, what that feels like, what it is to be a hero, to stand up for somebody and do the right thing. We celebrate those things in great plays and great pictures. Okay, so number 2, we have a proclivity to lose hope. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that so interesting? We are oversensitive to the bad sides of existence. That's what your detail is saying. We really retain how hard something was. And it's hard to remember the joys of things. So, art is a purveyor of hope. I totally believe that. I really do think that even in the hardest plays, we're learning how to hope. Because even if all this happens to Hamlet or King Lear or Romeo and Juliet, again, Romeo and Juliet, the last line is, it's over now. A glooming peace. It's gloomy, but it is a peace, and that is progress, right? So there is hope from this. And even if it just goes all to shit like Hamlet, in the audience, we are going, now that I've seen that, we can avoid it. We can try our damnedest, right? So there's hope in that. We are learning. There's hope in learning. So I love that. Okay, number 3, we incline towards feelings of isolation and persecution because we have an unrealistic sense of how much difficulty is normal. Isn't that fascinating? Such an interesting way to think about it. So we think everything's super hard because it's happening to us. and we feel isolated. I'm like, oh God, I'm the only woman who's ever had a 2-month-old baby that is up at 3 a.m. That's the only woman on the planet who's dealing with this. Poor me, help me, Facebook. So, and this is, that's the light version, but also like every breakup, every death, it is so powerful to each of us. And it can make us feel like we're the only one in the world that ever been through this. And what does art do? Art's like, nope, I gotcha. Not only has this happened before, it's happening right now, it'll happen in the future. So, come feel. At minimum, you will feel like you're not alone, which is, number 3, art is a source of dignified sorrow. Wow, right? Art reminds us of the legitimate place of sorrow in a good life, so we panic less about things that as they're happening to us. Isn't that beautiful? This makes me so happy all over. Right, like that good people, bad things can happen to good people, and it is how you recover. What is resilience? right? What is hope out of those bad things? That's the greatest lesson, because like there's a lot of things, chaos and stuff that we can't control, but how you recover, how you have that dignified sorrow so that not all is lost, and the only thing to do is to die yourself. No, there's a reason to get up in the morning, right? That you didn't know you were doing that. That's clever. 4, we are unbalanced and lose sight of our best sides. We aren't just one person, we're made up of multiple selves, and we recognize that some of those selves are better than others. All right, so then on the 4 here, a balancing agent. Art encodes with unusual clarity the essence of our good qualities and holds them up for us to see. Right, that took me a minute to kind of sit back and get that, but right, there's a part of me that's super selfish. There's a part of me that is a jerk. And there's a part of me that is quite noble and generous. And, you know, and this can all happen in like 60 seconds of interaction with my 3-year-old. That can be all of those things, depending on his mood and mine. But what art does, again, even in something like Lear, where there's a lot of bad things happening to bad people, it still holds up Cordelia. Like, we all know who should be running that damn country. It's Cordelia, who is like generous and understanding and listen and honest. And it's like, I know this is not what you want to hear, but this is the truth. I love you as much as I'm supposed to. Right? That's good, right? Right. Well, that's not good enough for King Lear, who's selfish and prideful. Right? So we, as even if we see that Cordelia dies in the end, part of our reptile brain could be like, okay, so don't be like Cordelia, because I don't want to die, right? But no, she's the reason why there is any hope at all for humanity, is that in this sea of tragedy, even though she dies, we learn, yeah, I knew all along, trust her, she's the one, right?
Go to France, don't come back.
Go to France, that's the lesson. Indeed, just don't come back, don't do it. That's the lesson. That would be great, like what are the really odd lessons of all of Shakespeare's plays? Yeah, stay away from Verona. Yes, so I love this, okay, so where were we? Balancing, balancing agent. Yes, so it tells us, we know when we are like in doubt, we know, okay, I feel something weird about that priest. I know I've not been told exactly, right, there's the nobility of that nun to take that boy's claim seriously and to doubt herself and her faith. Because, right, that's part of what it's about, right? She's supposed to believe her superiors, the priest above her and the archpriest above that. But that's what she's doing, is going, there's nobility in saying, I need to doubt this, I have to, that is, you know. So and anyway, all of these plays, there's things that we hold up, those moments of generosity, of sacrifice. Those are the ones that we're treasuring. So that's part of what we can do to do. All right, 5, we are hard to get to know. We are mysterious even to ourselves, and therefore no good at explaining who we are to others. I think that's great. Art is a guide to self-knowledge. Art can help us identify what is central to ourselves, like what's really important. If we're watching a play, we're going, you can't lie to people, right? That it helps us go, yeah, that does make me mad. Like when I was sitting in that courtroom and I heard domestic violence and I was like, ready to battle. That was a very clear, visceral, heartbeat-based level indicator for me that really matters. That really matters to me. Which is how I will know what organizations to donate to now. Very clearly, donate more to those, because that was really interesting thing. So, okay, guide to self-knowledge. Much that is human is not readily available in language, and we hold up art objects and experiences like this, emotional experiences, and say confusedly but importantly, what's this mean? Right? There's so many times, even with plays, that seem to not be about anyone like you or yourself, that you walk away going, yeah, there's a little Hamlet in me, all right? Yeah, like, oh, I've totally been Juliet. God, I love that guy, right? There's a lot of those things that seem very distant from us, or something like Skeleton Crew, which does not seem to relate to a lot of us here in Mill Valley, in the center of Bay Area, California privilege that it is. Seeing that play, we're gonna go, yeah, that was my mom, I know that woman, or yeah, I would do that, or I would hope to do that, right? That there's an engagement and an opening up to who we are. Okay, 6, we reject many experiences, people, places, and eras that have something important to offer us because they come in the wrong wrapping. Okay, great. So 6 is a guide to the extension of experience. Art is an immensely sophisticated accumulation of the experience of others. Right, that is the entire point. Again, this whole, we have one protagonist because we need to share the brain. I will take my brain off for a minute, put on Hamlet's brain. Cool, tell me what it's like in your brain, Hamlet. Right, that is an amazing experience, and it is a transformative one. It continues our learning process so that when we come across, again, primal people, come across somebody, we can say, I recognize in the way that you cared for your little kid that I think I can trust you, right? Or at least we can talk about kids. Cool. So that's a place where maybe we can start. If we appear like we might be enemies or we have nothing to talk about, based on these little social clues, how you talk about this, how I share this, how whatever, right? So there's, that's the kind of the primal experience, but the kind of joy of art is feeling like you walk away with new friends or new family. You walk away going, I know those people now. I feel the people, and certainly politically now, this is an article I wrote just a little while ago in the San Francisco Chronicle talking about the difference of social media versus theater, how they work differently. Social media just truncates everything and makes it so hot and short that we can't connect. We think we're connecting, but we're just shouting into this. Where theater actually goes, you want to talk about politics, you want to talk about class in America, go see Skeleton Crew right now. See this play now, and you will have a way better understanding than anything you're going to watch on Fox News or on CNN or on following some crazy person's Twitter or whatever, right? Because that is so empathetic. We learn so much about what those lived experiences are like that you can't. So in that way, I would define theater as the true social media, because it is actually social. We're actually together, not just shouting. Anyway, yes, okay, great. So the last one is we are desensitized by familiarity and live in a commercially dominated world that highlights glamour. Hence, we often end up dissatisfied that life is humdrum, that we are gnawed by the worry that life is elsewhere. I think that is a bit of a privileged point of view, that we can be like, I'm bored. But art does allow us to have a kind of radiant roller coaster emotional experience in a safe 2.5 hours, right? With a break in the middle to buy a cookie. So in that way, he says that it is a resensitization tool. Art peels away our shell and saves us from our spoilt, habitual disregard of what is around us. We can get really selfish, right? We focus on work, I gotta go to work, I gotta get the kids, I gotta do this, and I don't know if we're gonna have time for anybody else. But art says, yeah, I know, just sit down for like an hour or two. It's okay. And then you feel the feels. And you can fall in love again, and you can get mad, and justice, and rage, and all the things that theater can give you. It resensitizes you to those things that going, wow, if I just listened to NPR all the way home, I probably wouldn't have felt this new sense of purpose or understanding or reason or energy. So that certainly is what happens to me when I go to Young or when I go to MoMA or when I come see theater. One or all of these happens to me. So I think it's a great thing. I think about it sometimes when I'm in a bit of a hole with the play. I'm like, I think it works, but I just don't feel much. I kind of go back to here and I kind of go, what are these people telling me about me? What are these characters telling me about me? What is the dignified sorrow of the play or the hardship that I can come up right next to, and instead of looking at it like, oh no, train wreck, I can look at it and see what is the dignity? How is that person being resilient? How are they being empowered out of something hard? Even if it's not easy for them, it may take a whole play for them to find dignity in their own sorrow, but that is part of it. And this corrective of bad memory, making things, like again, going back to, well, it's under here now, but what was vivid and memorable in Daniel Dennett's purpose of a story? What is vivid? Vivid means memorable. So if there is a corrective of bad memory, we need to make something that's so powerful that people will walk away feeling shaken by it. Anyway, I think all this for you to think about as you go along. So we're going to get to your stories for a second, but I wanted to do one more douse of science for you about structure, about story structure. So this is a study that came out a year ago or so. I find it so fascinating. So what they did was they took certain words, emotional language, in like about 1,500 pieces of fiction, including plays and fairy tales and things. And so they ran them through this very sophisticated computer program, and they came up with 6 graphs. These are the emotional trajectories of over 1,000 stories. The stories that are the big ones, like Shakespeare's in here, and like Cinderella, and the big iconic stories. So now what this will be different than this. This will be the tension, the structural, dramatic structure of a story, which some of you who've had in my classes before will recognize this. But this is emotional. This is the emotional valence of a story. Meaning, where do we start emotionally? and it can be just, happy, sad. And where do we go? So they came up with 6 really distinct patterns. There were not many outliers. Now, really complex stories like Hamlet and Harry Potter and, Star Wars and all that stuff can fit in here too. And it may not seem that this is Hamlet. It actually is. It seems a little too simple. And there are moments, like if we zoomed in on this little section, we would see, of course, the spikes of, I'm really glad that I punched that guy in the face, but now I'm sad because I'm scared he's going to punch me back. Like that could be 5 seconds of emotional roller coaster. But overall, this is what we're doing. So again, what I take from this is my stories are going to fall in one of these, and I can either know that and decide, or just end up in one of them. But I think looking at the simplicity of these emotional arcs can actually help me answer some of these questions so that I control the ending. I don't just end up there, but that I get to say, no, I actually want to write this play. I want to write this one, I want to write that one. And to know that if things aren't going as, you're running out of ideas, maybe you're writing this one, but you actually want to be writing this one, right? So there's a way to own it. So let's talk about them for a little bit. So this is, high is happy, low is sad, you probably figured that out. So this one is the rags to riches story, it's just everything is terrible, and then yay, I'm the Prince of England. And you might know that this one certainly is not that satisfying. Remembering that we like sad things. So this is like too easy. Everyone's like, where do I sign up for that? What? Come on, that's too easy. What happened? He just won the lottery, right? Which is kind of like, cool, but it doesn't have this juicy, unctuous satisfaction to it. Tragedy does. So tragedy can, even though it's just the reverse, Romeo and Juliet, all of those tragedies, and so what this is we start off, King Lear is king. He's in charge, he's got all the things. Slowly, one thing pisses him off, then the other thing, well then his daughters are in control, and then they kick him out, and then he's crazy on the heath in the big storm, and he has Clola, and then he's this and that, and then he's dead, and he killed his daughter too. Well shit, that's awful. So we really don't have too many peaks there. Hamlet has a little bit, there are some moments of triumph. When I think there is satisfaction when he finds out that Claudius, when he's listening to Claudius, confess to the crime that he knew he did but couldn't prove it. There's satisfaction to that, but it's not happiness. It's kind of like motivation, right? Which can feel close to it, but that's a little bit different. So anyway, there's a lot going on here, but this is where we start with like, Hamlet's the prince. He's not great, he's not like the happiest guy, but he is the prince, he gets anything he wants, it's fine, right? So his would probably start a little bit more like here, and then just tanks. So that's something to think about. This is the man in a hole story where we're like, we're doing fine. I'm like, oh my God, everything is awful. But then you find a way not just to get back to where you were, right, but get to even achieve more. So this is where like you're in the normal person, oh, you get sent to war. Oh shit, it's awful. All of your friends are dying. Everything's terrible. Oh my God, but you finally make a way back and then you're elected president or something. I don't know. So you did. Yeah. Yeah.
Hurt Locker.
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, you have, this teaches you what you need to get even more than you had before. Cinderella story, the worst of the worst. Right, so we're starting opposite now. We're really bad news. And then we get to go to the ball and everything's freaking awesome, but then, damn it, we have to run away. She thinks that nobody likes her, but she knows that the guy, Prince, liked her, but she can't tell anybody, no one's gonna believe her, and her sisters are mean to her, but then, oh my God, the prince finds her, yay, great. So, yeah, okay, so now Icarus, he's like not super happy, but he's fine. And then, oh my God, this is the best news ever. Super bummer. Yeah, bad news. And then Oedipus is an interesting one. So similarly, we're starting to good news for the king, and then really bad news. We're gonna learn that we have this fate. But we try to outsmart the fate. We think we've done it, but then not so much. You are bad and gross, and everyone hates you, and you're dead. Bad news. So again, this seems super simplistic, right? And I kind of get a little nervous by this because it makes me go like, I don't know which one I am. I don't know. But I just think recognizing the trend in how our stories are told, the emotional curve of most stories, I think that's empowering, because we get to look at this and try to decide. Mainly, we decide where we're going to end up. Again, it's all about figuring out, are you teaching by the party at the end? Look what happens. If peace is accomplished and everybody is honest and all the good things, we get a party at the end. This is a Shakespeare romance or comedy. Big marriage, big party, big song, And then at the end of tragedies, of course, we're teaching by like, look how bad it can get. If you don't be nice and listen to Cordelia, you're gonna be super So again, this is super simplistic, but I think that there's some interesting mathiness to it. So if we're looking at where we want to end, there's like basically two options. If you're going to end high, you got to start low. If you're going to end low, you got to start high. Now, this has the complication. Again, nothing ends where it starts. Everything ends different, so there is change. Now, in all of the ones that have a dip or a hump in the middle, we learn something through this middle chunk. So we have to go really low before we can get even higher, right? So this is the thing in your play. If your play is a straight line, boring. That's, again, when we talked about stasis. Stasis is not interesting. It puts us to sleep, because it should, because thank God we don't have to worry about anything as, like, Anthropocene on the plains in Savannah, just like sleep. Everything's good, get rest. But if there's something important happening, if change is happening, we have to survey it and pay attention, so that's what this is all about. It's about change, which is what I was going to write it here, or I did. Okay. Change. That's what plot is. Plot is change. Somebody asked me, I solicited some questions online, and one person was asking about tension, dramatic tension, and that's all it is. It's things changing, and people having to adapt in an instant to what's going on. So you, as the writer, have to change things. You have to keep throwing things at your protagonists, watching them duck and falling for their lives. And that can be hard, because like we get them in where we want them, now we're meeting them, and we need to figure out the small changes that can lead to this big change. So that's why looking at some patterns like this, it can go, okay, so I know that we're gonna end here. So we have to go through something. What is this? What is this moment? Because basically, dramatic tension-wise, for a moment, we'll switch over to something different. So that's emotional language. This is basically like how happy, sad people are. But this is dramatic stakes. This is, Aristotle talks about this. He didn't draw this. This was some other dude, I can't remember. But a lot of dramatic structure looks like this. Stasis at the beginning, before the play begins, or as it begins. We are in some sort of stasis. This is where Hamlet is when he's just kind of being bored at the castle. This is the critical moment we talked a little bit about here, the new dynamic. This is the catalyst of the play. This is the new dynamic being when Hamlet's ghost dad shows up and it's like, been murdered. This is when Juliet is met, and we see the stasis is now broken because there's a new goal. So for Hamlet, justice, for Romeo, love, and they both work. Now, the reason why it's shaped like a triangle is because you try the low-hanging fruit first. Right? If you're in love, just go up and you're like, hi, can I dance? That's not a super big ask, right? It takes a lot to approach somebody, but he doesn't know that she's a Capulet. He doesn't know how hard this is going to be, right? So he tries the easy stuff first. Hamlet tries the easy stuff first too, being like, okay, let me just make sure that the whole ghost thing, like, did I actually see that? That's a pretty easy thing to ask yourself. Am I crazy? That's not an easy thing, but did I think I saw it? Horatio, did you see that? You saw that too. Okay, great. So I'm not totally crazy, just a little crazy. Cool. So again, this is as the tension rises and the stakes rise, this is that critical moment of climax in a play. This is what we're building to. This is that moment of revelation where all of this has been leading to this moment of revelation, the meaning of the play, the big action that defines everything. So the difference, of course, between emotion, this has nothing to do with emotion. You can be really sad or really happy at this moment of crisis, but things have to escalate in your story. And this is why, that whole plot change thing, we are wired to go if things start to ease up for your character, we're like, oh good, so they're fine. Okay, I don't have to pay attention anymore, right? Our lizard brain goes, I'm just paying attention for the exciting things. I'm here for the lesson. I'm here to be taught something important. So that's why you have to keep elevating and making it harder. They have to do bigger, riskier things to accomplish the goal or give up. And of course, your main character is not going to give up because then the play will be over and you should write another play. But your character has to go all the way to this nth point. And this nth point is the moment that you really can't turn back from. So all of these other moments for, say, Hamlet or Romeo and Juliet, you can turn back from. You can kind of go, well, I heard Claudius confess. Oh, fuck it, I give up. Right. Now he kills Polonius. That's a big moment. You can't turn back from that, but that's not actually the goal that he was after from the beginning. You should probably pay for killing that guy, but it doesn't have anything to do with justice for your dad's death. Or it kind of does, but not directly. So anyway, all of these other things can be the turning back moments. It's this one, when Romeo and Juliet, they could die, right? That's the moment they're deciding, am I going to kill myself? Which I have this poison, I have this dagger. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Okay, here we go, 1, 2, 3, this is thy sheath. So that's, again, finding that moment. This is the hardest thing about playwriting, is what is this moment? What are you leading your characters to that will test them so thoroughly, test them so critically, so fundamentally, and oftentimes in opposition to where they've been the entire time. So for Romeo and Juliet, the whole point is life, love, yay. And here they are choosing death and love, instead of life and love, which is the big shift, right, for them. And it is the most critical one. I would rather die than not be able to be with you. Okay. So a lot of things have to be made true for them, which is your job as the playwright, to make them critical, to make them immediate, and to make them that important so that they can't turn back. There's one action that will define them. And Hamlet, in a psychological way, Hamlet at the beginning, the whole to be or not to be thing, right? Well, this is Hamlet wrestling with, can I kill somebody? Can I do that? I don't know if I can. I mean, to be or not to be, okay, that seems to be the option, okay? But am I a killer? And to go back even further in the brilliant Shakespeare brain, am I the part of the rotten state of Denmark? Am I what's making it rotten? Am I part of that? Oh shit, I am. At the end, yes I am. I am. Because he is the person that he murders, right? He kills Polonius, but that's like a pass for some reason. But Claudius, he defines himself, partly because he doesn't know that Polonius is there, so it's kind of an accident. I mean, he definitely shoves a sword into a tapestry, thinking it's a rat. I don't think he thinks it's a rat, but anyway, it's not quite like I'm looking you in the eyes as I'm killing you, which is what he does when Claudius at the end, which makes him a bad guy. Like, he's a murderer, regicide, like straight up murderer. Yes, he deserved it by some measure. You are a murderer, thus you are what is rotten in the state of Denmark, thus the end, where we've now de-rottened the state of Denmark by the end of the play. So anyway, but that's that critical moment where he has to decide, even though he doesn't have to kill a king, right? The king's already been outed. He's gonna get dethroned. He's gonna, like, all these people now realize that Claudius is to blame for all of this, right? So Hamlet could have stopped at that point. But that is the moment the playwright gives him to go, you gonna kill him or not? You gonna kill him or not? You gonna kill him or not? This is the moment, this is it. Come on. If he walks away, walk away, you're not gonna get this moment again. And he's like, yeah, follow my mother, boom. Right? Ooh, chill, so good. So finding that moment that you're driving the play to, that's the real work, right? Once you know that moment, or once you have an idea, my story, they have to be tested against something that is so hard and so perhaps even antithetical to what they believe or who they think they are. That's the biggest lesson, right? That's when we define ourselves. And Aristotle says that, of course, it is not the things we say, but the things we do that define us. And that's what that moment is, right? There's a lot of talking in this play, but the climax is when Hamlet does it. And that's what defines him. Because no amount of talking can undo a murder. You can apologize if you say bad things and change your mind, but undoing a thing is very hard. So, all this is to say, these emotional peaks and valleys are brought about by characters going after something that is so valuable to them that they are willing to continue to change, to iterate, to ski, and go down the mountain, with the right Olympic-y term, I'm not sportsy, I shouldn't have gone to sports metaphors. But the swerving you have to do to adapt to a scenario. Again, if it's easy for them to walk away, it doesn't actually matter that much, then you're writing the wrong play. So it has to be something that is critical to their self, to their society, to their beliefs, to whatever. So all about this plot is about the change. That's why, again, the metaphor of the dominoes is a really good one. It's in this book by David Ball called Backwards and Forwards, which if you haven't read that, it's amazing. David Ball, like basketball. It's a book about directing and dramaturgy, really, but it's so great for writers too, because it describes, you'll get all the Hamlet you can eat, but describing how a play works, like very specifically and logistically how it works. And he uses that metaphor of dominoes all the time, that even one single word can be a domino that makes the next word happen. One sentence makes the next sentence happen. Because if they're not connected, if it's not active, right? Think about how fun it is to watch a bunch of dominoes go all over, right? It's actually like a great metaphor because it's super fun. You kind of can't stop watching. So you're just like, it's still going, things are falling. My 3-year-old loves that kind of stuff, right? Well, I'm kind of a 3-year-old when I'm watching a play, going, oh my God, and that's causing that, made her say this, made her reveal that, now this is happening, oh my God, it's all the dominoes. So that's the feeling that is addictive to human beings. That's why we have story, it works like that. So if your story isn't working like that, if there are these lulls, and you think that monologue is so beautiful and true, but your audience is not, your audience is like, well, that's a big, bad domino that fell smack on the ground and didn't do anything. Cut it, get it out, not worth it, right? The one thing we cannot do as storytellers is bore. You can do almost anything else. You can shock, you can confuse for a time, if you eventually, and sometimes you can confuse the whole thing. Like there's a lot of bad where I'm like, I don't know, I don't get it. But I'm still fascinated because there's stakes, right? There's like strange stakes to a great effective play. But anyway, so that is the one thing you cannot do. And so oftentimes what makes us fiddle with our, watches and our programs and move in our seats and feel like get me out of this play is because the plot isn't happening. The tension isn't there. Things aren't changing. Nothing is moving. And again, people think it's because we don't care about the characters or we don't care what's going on. It's usually because there's nothing going on. If anything happened, we would start to care because as human beings, again, when something happens and it is new, we go, whoop, yep, pay attention, even for a second. We have to sustain that attention, and good artists, but we will pay attention. So have something new happen, even if it's the game of like, who's on the phone? You get a call, who is it? Something changes. Somebody walks in, who is it? Open a present, what's inside, right? All of those games, writing kind of exercises, can often actually work in a play to make something new happen, to disrupt an argument. The other thing that oftentimes people do, especially in 10-minute plays with like teenagers, is the constant argument play, where we think it's dramatic because they're disagreeing for like 10 entire pages of people just fighting, and no one changes their mind. That is a terrible play, right? Because nothing changes, right? Well, we agree to disagree. Why did I watch that? That's terrible, right? So unless somebody goes, shit, you're right. Now suddenly I'm like, ooh, drama. What does that mean? They're right. Okay. What else are they right? Oh, now you're changing. You're changing in front of me. I'm watching somebody change their mind. That's a fascinating thing to see on stage. If you watch somebody struggle, even if it's completely silent. Some of the best moments in theater are when there's no words. It's just somebody going, oh God. I'm gonna go. Right? That actually was deeply dramatic, that little freak out right there. Because something's going on. I can tell something is changing in my mind. I'm having a little mini battle. Do I leave? Do I say it? Do I leave? Do I say it? Do I say this? Do I not? Do I have to say it? This is why the lead up to the kiss in a great love story is way better than the actual kiss. The kiss is over, right? Once you actually have the kiss, we're like, okay. Right? But the lead up is like, right? That's always, at a love story, it plays like magically heavily carbonated. But it's true, because we're waiting for a thing, we know something's gonna change, because it's just different when you kiss somebody's lips before and after that happens. Things are just different, right? We all know that. So, it's the same with like a punch in the face. Just things are gonna be different between you two after you get smacked in the nose by somebody. But once it happens, we need the next thing to look forward to. That's the domino fell now. Okay, so now I'm watching the next domino, I'm not watching that one anymore. I'm like, oh, and now what? So that's where the craft is. And that's why having the thin idea of a play isn't the actual craft of making every single moment add up. Because it's easy to talk about Hamlet like this, right? Okay, Hamlet's protagonist, Ghost Dad shows up, gotta get justice for Ghost Dad, gets justice for Ghost Dad, done. All right, but every little thing, right? Those moments when we see Hamlet, like I'm gonna play this entire country, right? I'm gonna use my wiles for this. I'm gonna play this game. I'm gonna use this tactic. I'm gonna try this. That to be or not to be. I mean, that's a gorgeous speech because he's actively thinking it through. He's not just like, here's what I've decided and I will share this with you. No, he's like, I'm actually actively in front of you weighing these things. Help me decide. I can't tell. To be or not, what do you think? Like, that's kind of what he's asking. Like, I'm actually dealing with this right now. Okay. It's not like, that's when Shakespeare sucks, is when it's just like, here's my beautiful thought. I'm just going to throw it to you and leave. That's not interesting at all. They have to be actively doing something. So that's when dominoes are falling, even within that speech, line to line, word to line, word to word. Change. So all this is very practical and comes back again to that more primal space of we are constantly looking for pattern, we're looking for breaks in pattern, we are looking for people testing themselves. What would I do? That's the biggest question we're asking ourselves when we sit down in any play. What would I do in that scenario? So if it's a super boring scenario with no stakes, we're gonna go, I'd leave and get coffee, I don't know, right? Right, and we're not invested, so that's part of your job, is making it highly valent. And you can actually make anything highly valent. There's plays about origami, and plays about gum, and things that would at first seem like, why would you write a play about that? And it's all because the goal is so profound, and the protagonist is one that cherishes this strange thing. It means something to them actively, and because it means something to them, it means something to us. I always quote my grandmother, who said, I apply it to creating characters of value, but she's like, an interesting person is a person with interests. That's true with protagonists. If your protagonist doesn't care about anything, if your protagonist is just like, right, if everything is that hipster then I don't care. And the audience can't care. Our protagonist has to care. Again, seeing this play on our stage right now, there's stakes, and there's personality and humor, but it's funny, and we care about it because they care about things that are very specific to them. They have goals. One wants to start this garage. One is pregnant and trying to get ready for this baby. The other one is a union leader trying to save everybody's jobs. Like, it actually is, it's very active and very specific. So when those things come at odds, our protagonist has to adapt and change and surf with everyone else's, taking into account everyone else's needs and interests, plus her own. That's why it makes such a rich and beautiful play. Okay, so talked about art, we talked about these interesting things. Don't think too much about this, but I just found the study really interesting. That why are there not 8 models of emotion? Why not 10? Why not 400? But the fact that we just it's like this is as much as we can fit in a story, this kind of arc. Like if we had another couple of bubbles, it'd be like, oh wash, I can't pay attention that long or something. So I find it really, really interesting. Yeah.
Can I ask one question about this?
Yeah.
So I know the emotional and the tension or the conflict is different, but I'm just curious about climax.
Yeah.
Would it be the lowest low or the highest high in the different graphs?
I think emotion, I don't know. Let's see. Very strategically, we'll talk about this more next week too, but very strategically, there's always a moment, and it's usually like halfway through a story. It's usually here where there is a big change in the story. It's almost like the first dynamic that really upset things. We'll say most successful stories have something that happens in the middle here. So my co-writer and I wrote a play called Miss Bennett. It's Christmas, Jane Austen-y, romancy thing. Literally the ending of the act, halfway through,
Lauren,
Yeah.
like in tragedy, like for instance, Death of the Salesman, it kind of starts on a low note. I mean, you see Willie Loman, and like the flashbacks maybe take you to a higher point emotionally, but like can tragedy pieces, can they start just kind of low? I mean, you really need this movement in order to really have something that is dramatic. Is that?
Yeah, Death of the Salesman is definitely a tragedy. So I think
so. The flashbacks are what give it the higher lift or something. Or?
I mean, again, if we look at this, then you don't actually. This one says you don't need to go up. I mean, to me, those flashbacks make it harder because I know because they're flashbacks. There's no hope in them because it's memory. So to me, that makes his journey even, it's worse. Like, oh, you had sons that loved you. You had this affair, well, like, screw you, but she made you happy, little baby, you messed that up too. Messed up your son, messed up your wife, messed up this, right? So it kind of just goes, whoo. You know what I mean? So I would say those flashbacks are more poignant in the way that nostalgia doesn't really make us happy all the time. It does something, and it can make us feel warm in some ways, but it has that tinge of sadness, if not outright huge bell of sadness to it, because again, it is not known, you can't go back to it, we all kind of know that. So yeah, I would say we only have that peak in something that is tragic or an official tragedy when there's purpose. Because oftentimes a tragedy, like I'm writing a version of Trojan Women right now, which is, it's like half a play basically, but it definitely is this. Well, no, it's like here and goes down. It's like so tragic. Starts off the worst, women that are enslaved after the Trojan War, their entire city is burned down, most of their men are dead, their children are dead, and they're just waiting to be shipped off to the people who will now own them, who are the victors of the war. Right? Awful. Just terrible. And it gets worse. So that tragedy is like, woo, straight elevator down to terrible down. But not all of them have that, are that dramatic, right? With Hamlet, what's so exciting about it is there is movement. In Trojan Women, there's nothing for them to really do. They're just sitting and being like, oh, this is getting worse. So there's change, there's investment, but it is mainly just nonstop, well, this is awful. And Hamlet, we have purpose. He's got a drive. There is some version of perhaps not joy, but meaning in action, doing something about it. Yeah, he talks a lot about action, doing things. That's where you find purpose and then doing of it. But he's kind of committed to being rotten. He's not like, yeah, things are going to be great. We're going to end up in a song and a dance and a marriage. Not going to happen in this play. Yeah. Okay, so all this going back to what this tells us, so we can start hearing about your stories. Kind of bombarding you with all this to know that there's metastructure in a story. Even being, again, I have small kids, and watching them, they understand what a story is. Even if they don't think so. When they tell a story, they're terrible, right? It's like, and this, and that, and a train, and it was a train. And it's like, we gotta work on the voice. No, they're 3 and like 1, so it's okay. But that, again, they don't know how to tell a story, but they know how to watch it. And if they are bored, done. Sorry, I'm throwing things or, peeing on things, I don't know. But they can tell you very quickly if it is not interesting. So we know even at that age what is of interest to us. And it's especially at that age because they are nothing but sponges of information. So anything that has highly valent teaching to it, they're drawn to. And if it's my voice, if it's trains or drugs, anything with trains or drugs. But again, they don't know how to tell it. So telling a story actually is hard, even though somehow we all know how to do it. We all know when it's not a good story, right? We can kind of go, yeah, that one not great, or this moment was not good. We're all like backseat storytellers when we're watching Netflix shows or whatever. But telling it is hard, so it is not in anyone's failing that this takes a lot of concentration and a lot of engineering, which is why I think some of the science-y engineering language helps me understand how to build the roller coaster. When you ride it, you know it's super fun. If you ride a roller coaster that's flat, you're like, this is just a train. It's not a roller coaster. Right, so we know that, but to build one, I wouldn't even know how to build one. Yes, it should go up here, I'm not sure how far to go down, I don't know. So there's a lot of work to this, but again, this allows me to kind of see what's underneath it. And so again, if we're looking at a story and figuring out what story to tell, what is the most interesting protagonist, what can be at stake for them that isn't ridiculous, right? That is something that is meaningful. What dominoes need to fall? What situation do I need to put them in? And that's your job. You have to put them in a situation that tests them again and again. And part of it is, it's got to be the protagonist's idea to be in that situation, right? It's their goal. So Hamlet's like, I'm going to concoct this play, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go talk to this person, I'm going to spy on this person, right? Those are all his ideas. But in those ideas, even though it was his idea to get to that place, he is learning something new about himself. He's tested again and again. Am I the person that's going to kill a guy that's praying? Nope, no I'm not. I'm going to kill a guy later, but not right now. So again, all of this is your job to design these moments that are so, that are in and of themselves, where's our little Daniel Dennett moment, that are experiments. every one of those scenes is basically an experiment. What's your protagonist gonna do? What's the outcome of it? And once you know the outcome, like any other good experiment, you can use that knowledge to do the next experiment, to prove the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. So I do think that it's easy to just get lost in our language, to get lost in poetry, to get lost in like, oh, this character is so lovely or funny or sad, and do all that kind of stuff. And we lose the fact that your job is to keep someone's attention. And if you lose it, that's your fault, not theirs. So keep those stakes high, keep the tension high. And it all happens when things are changing and people are responding to the change. Cause effect, cause effect, cause effect. So this is also why monologues are really hard. Oh, I love this quote. They're easy to write and hard to justify. Because it's so easy to get bored in a monologue, right? When somebody does the back in 1945, I was a young girl. I'm dead right away. So having an urgent reason, that's why one person plays are hard. Even though I'm writing one right now, it is very interesting. It is hard, but it's really compelling. I'm learning a lot. But that is to say, having a reason to tell the story. One of the things in David Ball's book is that we talk when we need something or want something. That's it. We actually don't talk if we don't want anything or need anything. And even I need attention, I need to be the center of attention, I need to, and then there's practical things. I need something from you. I need you to not leave. I need you to give me this. I need you to understand this. There's more aesthetic and, philosophical things about I need to be understood for my true nature, But so keeping that in mind as people talk when they need something helps you avoid those moments that are just pretty, or just funny, or just, really good writing, just sitting there, although on stage, which again, easy to write, hard to justify. So the hard work, unlike a novel, which, you need this in novel writing too, but there's more time and space to wax poetically or to engage in a memory that sweeps us away. In theater, we don't do that so much. We can't really. Because it's live, we can't pause and just wonder at the meaning of things and let something be beautiful. We're like, yeah, but what was it? Where are we going? Right. So making sure that's part of the second hardest thing besides finding the climax is getting there within a reasonable amount of time, feeling like there's a reason that we got there, where it's not totally inorganic, that we just jumped there, or that all of this is stupid to getting, that's like, oh, that was more predictable. There's a lot of things about how we get from A to B that's hard to do. So that's the first hard thing. The second hardest thing is making sure that all of those, there's enough dominoes and they're falling with regularity so that we, again, have that spike of dopamine as we go, ooh, something happened. Ooh, this thing is coming next. Like getting an email or a text that's actually chemically reactive to our brains, because it is. It's the same with something new. Something's happening, something's changing. A text, what's it say? Oh, it's just my one. Okay. Oh, I got another one. Okay, right. That's what's going on. What's going on in art too. My son has this funny thing where he, even and it does it particularly in Star Wars when we let him watch Star Wars. We let him watch Star Wars. He doesn't do it as much in the animated shows that he sometimes watches, but he does this thing where when something exciting goes on, he goes, "What is happening next?" I was like, "You're a great dramaturg. This is perfect." He's like a baby dramaturg. Every time something happens, what is happening next? I love it. So I actually think that's great. Imagine my son, my little 3-year-old, being next to you, being like, "What is happening next?" As your writer. Because he's just on the dopamine. He's just like, cool, now there's a lightsaber. Cool, now it's a spaceship. Cool, that's happening. Now we're running away from that guy. Cool, great, what's happening next? So in some ways, that's what our plays need to be too. Now we can go Chekhov on this too. We're going all the way from George Lucas to Chekhov. But Chekhov, is notoriously, nothing happens, nothing changes. Everything changes in those plays, or at least everything is attempted. And that is change, because it changes us when we try something. Even if we go right back to literally where we are, right? When everyone's trying to get to Moscow, and they don't. But the attempt is made. Saying aloud what you want is actually hard for a lot of people. Saying who I am to somebody else is hard. Saying, that you love somebody, that's a big one, right? And those are things that don't have lots of lightsabers to them, but are hugely emotionally impactful. But you have to set up the moment where the person feels organically compelled to have the reason to go, I have to tell you who I really am right now. I have to tell you what's critically important to me. I have to say that I love you. Right? There's a lot of things that have to be either pushed on a person or loosed from a person so that they get to a place of going, I love you, you love me, right? So that's what happens in Chekhov all the time, and why his plays are so exciting and beautiful for actors is because of the subtlety. So it's not as much Shakespeare sword wielding and poison swallowing and things like that, but it is equally human. That's why those stories last. So this is, again, to say, and I talk a lot about like Romeo, Juliet, and Hamlet, and King Lear, which a lot of things happen, and storms, and dying, and battles, but it can also be very intimate and very small, that huge emotional things are happening, huge changes are happening. And so this is just, again, to kind of alight your senses to that, the idea of change. And it can be, small change can be big on stage. And it's about making sure that this person feels compelled and translate that compulsion to us so that the audience is with them and believes them and wants them. So all of these things, as I'm writing, I try to step back every now and then and just try to calculate with my little what's happening next son in my ear, to help me figure out, that something has to change in every scene, every beat really, which beat is a bit of a nebulous term, but it is kind of a chorus I'd say a verse of a scene. And sometimes it can be a whole scene, but the idea that at least within a scene, something has to change, something has to be advanced, has to be attempted, has to be put out there, and a change can happen. They cannot get what they want, but in not getting it, you're getting something is still changing, right? So there has to be advancement, or else we are just writing a self-serving scene, which again can be beautiful and may be very funny. But even if it's funny for a moment, the audience wants you to cut it. Because they're like, I don't care, go. What's happening next? So yes, that is, I have to record him, the way he does it is funny. I'm just yep, that's actually what we want to know. There's nothing fancy, artsy about that, but that's literally every audience member is just my 3-year-old. So anyway, so that's part of what I want to, the large scale painting in and kind of approaching storytelling from a bunch of different ways, which I realize is what we've done today. It's not been super smooth, but I think some people need visuals, some people need sciencey stuff, some people need just give people a list. But all of it is the same. So then, as we move towards talking about your specific ideas, which we will not put on our camera,